Chapter 9:11. Noon had arrived. As soon as Long Chen finished speaking, he disappeared from where he stood. When he reappeared, he was already standing on the high platform. In front of him was Lu Weitian. The two of them were less than a meter apart. "You want Mei Er to serve you well? Let's see if your life is tough enough." Long Chen sneered and threw out a punch with his right hand. Rumble. With that punch, divine power was turbulent. The light behind Long Chen was like a tide as it landed on Lu Weitian with a loud bang. Lu Weitian's hair stood on end and his eyes were filled with shock. He did not even have time to release the divine light from his body before it was torn apart. Crack, crack, crack. Fresh blood splattered everywhere and half of Lu Weitian's body was blasted into pieces. The emperors standing in front of him had a drastic change of expression, and all of them stood up. "Get lost!" Long Chen roared, and the halberd in his hand appeared. The halberd swept across, and a vast suppressive force swept in all directions. Blood rained down, and the other 9 examiners on the high platform were shocked. Their faces were as pale as paper, and they retreated frantically. 2 of the 4 late-stage sovereign emperors charging at him were actually sliced in half at the waist. The other 3 were slightly slower, but their backs were still blasted dozens of meters into the ground. The entire promotion plaza was filled with dust, and the aura in the surroundings was extremely violent. When the red-robed examiners saw this, their aura became chaotic. They felt as if there was a mountain suppressing their divine power. The entire place became extremely quiet. It was as if a thin needle had fallen to the ground. After a few breaths, Lu Weitian was trembling in fear as he said, What kind of power is this? How can this be?" With one move, 5 late-stage emperors were shocked. 2 of them had their bodies cut in half and Lu Weitian was captured. Was this really the battle prowess of an imperial emperor? The other 7 mid-stage emperors did not dare to move at all. All of them stood rooted to the ground. Bang! Long Chen moved his halberd again and directly blasted Lu Weitian's body into pieces. His soul passed through the halberd and was suppressed by the halberd. There are still 30 imperial emperors. 13 of them are late-stage imperial emperors. 8 of them have been crowned. I'll make a trip there. Today, I want to see what makes you so arrogant. Long Chen's halberd was like a rainbow as it carried Lu Weitian's divine soul and charged towards the other monarchs. The 5 late-stage god emperors felt their hair stand on end as they shouted, "This person is probably from the Tianyuan divine race, and it's very likely that he has reached the peak stage of the god emperor realm. Run quickly." No one had expected that the battle would turn out like this when it had just begun. The dozen or so imperial emperors had been insufferably arrogant just a moment ago, but now they were like rats scurrying across the street. Long Chen followed closely behind. Even a late-stage sovereign emperor could not take a single blow from his halberd. Jean Lanue looked at Yun Mei Er's infatuated expression and couldn't help but laugh. "How is it? Our man is alright, right? I'm afraid there's no one below the Emperor realm who can defeat him in the Northern Foot territory." Yun Mei nodded subconsciously. She was both grateful and touched. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the dozen or so imperial emperors who were fleeing were all killed by Long Chen in less than a quarter of an hour. Their divine souls were all hung on the halberd. Long Chen stood at the center of the square, turned around and said to Yun Mei and Jean Lanue, Let's go and see how strong this so-called Lu Chamber of Commerce is." Jean Lanue nodded and waved her right hand. She brought Yun Mei and followed closely behind. On the promotion square, the 9 examiners and a group of red-robed adjudicators all gasped and murmured, "This time, Lu Chamber of Commerce has kicked an iron plate. This person's battle strength is too strong." In Shanghai City, most of the Imperial Emperor's battle strength is not high. Lu Chamber of Commerce will be severely injured even if they don't die. Let's go and see. This guy won't be thinking of slaughtering the remaining 30 Imperial Emperors of Lu Chamber of Commerce, right? So what if he slaughters them? Lu Weitian's arrogant look just now, Even I feel disgusted by it. He can kill a late-stage imperial emperor in one move. The halberd in his hand is probably an ancestral artifact. The crowd exclaimed and followed Long Chen to Lu Chamber of Commerce. They all wanted to see how Lu Chamber of Commerce would deal with this situation. Lu Chamber of Commerce. It was also very busy at the moment. Everyone was preparing to obtain the qualifications to enter the Earth Grade shop. Lu Tianyu was preparing to leave the Chamber of Commerce unhurriedly. He waved his hand and said, "When the people who went to deal with the Sea of Clouds shop come back, tell them to come to me directly. Prepare to take back all the shops under the Sea of Clouds shop, drive all of them out of Shanghai City, and find a chance to kill them." The person beside him immediately nodded and replied, "How dare a small Huang grade shop offend our Lu Chamber of Commerce? Isn't it because my father took a fancy to that woman, but that unveil is said to be quite beautiful?" Lu Tianyu said with a smile as he walked out of the courtyard. When he walked out of the courtyard, before he even stepped into the shop, several people rushed in front of him with panicked expressions. The leader shouted, "Not good, not good, everyone who went to the promotion plaza has been killed." "What? All killed? How is that possible? Don't spout nonsense." Lu Tianyu's face turned cold. "The news is correct. The people from the Sea of Clouds shop are on their way here. They will arrive in 15 minutes at most," the leader said in a panic. Lu Tianyu was furious when he heard this and said, "How many people are there? Isn't there only one late-stage imperial emperor in the Sea of Clouds shop?" "There is indeed only one person, but according to the news, that person is probably from the Tianyuan divine race, and he is most likely a peak-stage imperial emperor who has been crowned." Deng deng. Lu Tianyu's expression changed, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. "Come with me to see the president. This matter is getting out of hand. We must find a way to kill this person." Lu Tianyu flew into the sky and headed straight to the biggest shop in Lu Chamber of Commerce. Long Chen brought Yun Mei'er and Zhan Lanyue to the Xian Street where Lu Chamber of Commerce was located. Pung pung pung. Long Chen moved his halberd and the divine souls of the imperial emperors were destroyed one by one. In the end, only Lu Weitian was left. Long Chen said coldly, "Those are the shops of Lu Chamber of Commerce." Lu Weitian's divine soul was weakened by the halberd and the suppression force made him feel weak like never before. Don't kill me, I will tell you everything." Lu Weitian was terrified when he saw the divine souls of the imperial emperors being destroyed. Lu Weitian said the shop's serial number word by word. Long Chen turned into a ray of light and rushed out. He didn't have the intention to kill Lu Weitian because he couldn't sense the remains of the imperial emperor on Lu Weitian. Long Chen grabbed Lu Weitian's divine soul with his left hand and the halberd in his right hand fell to the ground. Chapter 9:12. Long Chen's voice reverberated across the dark street, causing many experts to rise into the air. Those who followed Long Chen from the Yellow Promotion Plaza began to discuss with the people around them. Who is this person? How dare he suppress the people from the Building Chamber of Commerce? What else? He has already been judged. Even if he destroys the entire Building Chamber of Commerce within 3 days, no one will care. He destroyed the Building Chamber of Commerce by himself? What are you talking about? He alone is enough to make the Building Chamber of Commerce tremble. This is the Shanghai City, not the outside world. This person's cultivation is most likely at the Great Perfection Imperial Emperor realm. He even inherited the Tianyuan Divine Clan. Tianyuan Divine Clan? You must be joking. As the crowd was discussing, Long Chen led Zhan Lanyue and Yun Mei'er into the air. The halberd in his hand was like a rainbow, and wherever it passed, the shops were destroyed. There were not many imperial emperors in the shop. Some tried to attack Long Chen from time to time, but almost all of them were killed by Long Chen. After 1 or 2 intermediate imperial emperors died, no one dared to attack anymore. Many people even cut ties with the Building Chamber of Commerce, claiming that they were only hired to refine pills, and fled. With such a big event happening in the dark street, all the forces were watching from afar. The building Chamber of Commerce originally had the chance to get the shops in the Earth Street. Now that Long Chen had caused such a ruckus, no matter what the outcome was, it would all be for naught. Moreover, the building Chamber of Commerce was heavily damaged, and it was unknown who would be able to get this piece of meat. Rumble. A 4-story building had been blasted into smithereens, and there was no one left inside. Stop. The building collapsed, and a group of more than 30 people came from afar. Each of them was an imperial emperor. The leader was a bald old man at the Great Perfection Imperial Emperor realm. Long Chen heard this and his eyes fell on this person. Although this person was at the Great Perfection Imperial Emperor realm, the power of his flesh and blood was extremely weak. It even gave people a sense of fragility. On the contrary, there seemed to be divine light in his eyes, and Tao rhymes were evolving. Their eyes met. The old man's body moved slightly, and a violent storm rose around him. An indescribable aura made everyone's hair stand on end. Bang, bang, bang. One after another, the onlookers fell to their knees, and blood began to ooze out of their bodies. Long Chen's divine power surged like a tide. He frowned, but he realized that the whole world seemed to be pressuring him. The long halberd suddenly turned around and suppressed his head. Long Chen's face was filled with surprise, but he was also extremely puzzled. This person's battle prowess was truly strange and unpredictable. Humph! However, at this moment, a cold snort suddenly sounded from Long Chen's soul. The person who had spoken was naturally the remnant soul of the Emperor Lord. As soon as he finished speaking, the pressure that filled the sky and the Taoist rhyme laws disappeared without a trace. Long Chen could clearly feel that something invisible was crumbling around him. Puchi. The old man spat out a mouthful of blood. The divine light in his eyes flickered like a lamp wick swaying in the wind. Attack! Kill him for me! Lu Tianyu, who was beside the old man, saw Long Chen's left hand grabbing Lu Weitian, and his eyes instantly turned red. The emperors behind him transformed into rainbows and charged towards Long Chen. Stop! The bald old man's expression changed. He was the first to speak, but his words were slower. Just as he finished speaking, Long Chen had already attacked with his long halberd. The emperors seemed to have heard of Long Chen's battle prowess beforehand. They activated their soul skills the moment they attacked, and a vast power surged out. Buzz, buzz, buzz. As such a terrifying wave descended, countless formation runes appeared on the streets in all directions. They protected the surrounding streets. Inside Shanghai City, there seemed to be someone watching the scene and using a formation to prevent the destruction of both sides. Long Chen's long halberd pierced through the air. The dragon's shadow behind him circled. He could only unleash his battle prowess to the extreme. Rumble. Divine light intersected, and the explosive aura was deafening. Long Chen was like a god of war descending to the world. Every move he made was like a divine dragon surging forward. Under his long halberd, the emperors were instantly killed. In less than 100 breaths' time, the battle came to an abrupt end. The surrounding people stared at Long Chen. They were already numb to his monstrous battle prowess. However, this time, everyone was certain that Long Chen was a member of the Tianyuan divine clan born from the 9 heavens. The Tianyuan divine clan was second only to the divine clan born from chaos. There were probably only a few of them in the North Foot territory. Everyone, stop! The bald old man roared. The divine light in his eyes gathered again. As his Taoist rhymes circulated, he suppressed the emperors behind him who were about to attack. Long Chen narrowed his eyes and stopped in his tracks. He was still a little wary of the old man's strange attack. On the other hand, the emperor's remnant soul reminded him, "Don't be afraid of him. His attack is strange because he is a heavenly fate cultivator. He activated some inextinguishable Tao law just now. He wanted to use it to suppress you. Heavenly fate cultivator. Long Chen was stunned. He had been in the ancient Saint Divine world for so long, but this was the first time he had met a heavenly fate cultivator. This cultivator's physical body was so weak that even the divine light around him had almost disappeared. However, his gaze just now was really terrifying. "Don't worry, just kill him." The Emperor's remnant soul's words were full of sarcasm, but he was also arrogant. Heavenly fate? Who knows the heavens better than I do? Long Chen heard this and figured out what was going on. A heavenly fate cultivator could peek into the creation of heaven and earth and activate the inextinguishable Tao law. However, in the ancient Saint Divine world, who could display their slight skill in front of the ancient Saint Divine world's Lord? The ancient Saint Divine world's Lord had personally left behind the inextinguishable Tao law in this world. No wonder the Emperor's remnant soul had said that if Long Chen cultivated heavenly fate, he would be able to reach an extraordinary realm in a short period of time. Of course, in the eyes of the Emperor's remnant soul, cultivating heavenly fate was just a waste of time. Perhaps he only wanted Long Chen to become the next lord of the ancient Saint Divine world in the shortest time possible, so that he could help him reorganize the ancient Saint Divine world. Long Chen still could not understand. The ancient Saint Divine world's Lord's remnant soul was already so powerful after being nurtured by the primal chaos Golden Codex. Who could kill him in the ancient Saint Divine world? The Emperor's remnant soul had never revealed this matter. In fact, every time it was mentioned, it would make him angry. Please don't be angry. There must be a misunderstanding. Long Chen's thoughts were running wild, and the bald old man spoke again. Then tell me what misunderstanding there is, Long Chen sneered and said. If I'm not satisfied with one sentence, I'll kill one of you. Then I'll kill you. The bald old man had come up with a killing move. Now that the heavenly fate was useless, he wanted to use the word misunderstanding to settle the matter. Long Chen was not so magnanimous. Beside the bald old man, Vice President Lu Tianyu was already drenched in cold sweat. Chapter 9:13. On the Xian Street, everyone was in a daze. No one had thought that even the president of the Lu Chamber of Commerce would give in. This was a heavenly fate realm cultivator. Heavenly fate realm cultivators could find yin and yang, peek into fortune, and observe the past and present. It was very strange. Everyone smiled bitterly and shook their heads. When they saw Long Chen today, they were too shocked. His terrifying battle prowess was ridiculously strong. The bald old man's expression changed slightly when he heard Long Chen's words. However, he still nodded and replied, "This has nothing to do with the Lu Chamber of Commerce. It's all Lu Weixian's doing. You can kill me or kill me as you wish. The Lu Chamber of Commerce will compensate the Cloud Sea Shop with 3 years of profit." Bang! As soon as he finished speaking, Long Chen's halberd fell into the crowd in front of everyone. The Imperial Emperor who was pointed at by the halberd was terrified. The people beside him were about to attack when they were stopped by the bald old man. A middle-stage Imperial Emperor was killed by Long Chen before he could run more than 10 meters. After killing a middle-stage Imperial Emperor, Long Chen sneered, "If this has nothing to do with the Lu Chamber of Commerce, why are all of you here today? If I'm not powerful enough, will you spare my life? Will you spare the Cloud Sea Shop?" The bald old man was speechless. His clothes were soaked in sweat and stuck to his body. The old man took a deep breath. The divine light in his eyes was like a sharp blade piercing through the sky. Thousands of golden threads twisted Lu Tianyu in an instant. Lu Tianyu's body turned into powder in an instant. Only his divine soul was left. Bang! Long Chen's halberd moved and saved his spiritual soul. He said, "It's not your turn to kill this person. You still need an explanation for this matter. You should know that even if I kill all of you today, it's fine." Long Chen captured Lu Tianyu. However, he frowned because he still couldn't sense the aura of the Imperial Emperor's body. This meant that the body was no longer in Lu Tianyu's hands. The bald old man stared at Long Chen, Lu Tianyu, and Lu Weitian with divine light in his eyes. He whispered, "Please spare our lives. The Lu Chamber of Commerce is willing to give 5 floors of our shop to the Cloud Sea shop and sign a contract with the Judgment Team. We will never take revenge. Also, I might know something about what you're looking for." Long Chen's pupils suddenly shrank. He stared at the bald old man and asked, "You know what I want?" The bald old man bowed and nodded. Before Long Chen could say anything, Yun Mei stepped forward and said, "I only want 3 floors of your Chamber of Commerce's shops. But from today onwards, not only must you sign an agreement to never take revenge, you must also sell the pills refined by my Cloud Sea shop to the Chamber of Commerce. We'll split the profits 50-50. If the sales aren't good, you can choose to reject it." Everyone was startled, obviously not expecting Yun Mei to speak up for the Lu Chamber of Commerce at this time. After all, at this moment, Long Chen's battle prowess was probably enough to slaughter all the high-level battle prowess of the Chamber of Commerce. However, some people couldn't help but nod and stare at Yun Mei with sparkling eyes. Her actions seemed to have saved the Pavilion Chamber of Commerce, but in fact, she had also saved the Cloud Sea shop, and found the fastest opportunity for the Cloud Sea shop to upgrade. If the Pavilion Chamber of Commerce sold a large number of shops, the Cloud Sea shop would definitely not be able to digest the final result. The rapid decline of the Pavilion Chamber of Commerce's shops would inevitably be suppressed by other chambers of commerce, and in the end, it would only be a wedding dress. This was the principle of biting off more than one could chew. Originally, the big cake of the Pavilion Chamber of Commerce was equivalent to Yun Mei's Cloud Sea shop occupying 3 floors, and there was an additional area for the Chamber of Commerce to sell. The bald old man obviously didn't expect Yun Mei to do such a thing. After a brief surprise, he couldn't help but look at Yun Mei again, and then said with a smile, "Miss is very talented. Our Pavilion Chamber of Commerce is willing to cooperate with you. As long as the Cloud Sea shop sells pills, we will only take 20% of the profits." Long Chen on the side couldn't help but snort softly. This old man really knew how to flatter. In this way, as long as Yun Mei agreed, Long Chen naturally wouldn't make things difficult for them. Yun Mei stared at the old man and said, "This little girl hopes that today's matter will end with Lu Weitian and his son. If it wasn't for Yun Mei's proposal, the Pavilion Chamber of Commerce would have been burned down today, and all the upper echelons would have died. Once the day of judgment is over, war will be over." The old man nodded, but still couldn't help but let out a long breath, and looked at Long Chen with fear. He cultivated heavenly fate, and originally wanted to suppress Long Chen in one fell swoop. But when he mobilized the power of heaven and earth, it instantly collapsed, and that feeling made him inexplicably horrified. He couldn't even see through Long Chen's heavenly fate. If Long Chen was really of the Tianyuan divine clan, he must have an ancestral artifact that could resist heavenly fate cultivators. In any case, it was unwise to fight Long Chen again. The surrounding onlookers were also sighing, and seeing that the matter had come to an end, they all dispersed. On the contrary, many of the powers on Xian Street snorted, and their mood wasn't very good. If it wasn't for Yun Mei's actions, once the Pavilion Chamber of Commerce was destroyed, they would have a share of the shops on this street. However, from today onwards, they all remembered the names of Yun Mei and Yun Hai shop. This woman wasn't simple, and the man behind her was even more so. "Please follow me to the Pavilion Chamber of Commerce for a chat. This old man can also discuss with Yun Mei's shopkeeper about our future cooperation." The old man was very polite. Long Chen nodded. This old man was indeed worthy of being the shopkeeper of the Pavilion Chamber of Commerce, and he was very good at judging the situation. He didn't mention today's matter at all, and instead led the topic to the cooperation with Yun Mei. Long Chen nodded, and followed behind the old man with Yun Mei, tacitly agreeing with his words. Just as the few of them were about to leave, Lu Tianyu shouted, "This has nothing to do with me, it's all Lu Weishan's doing, President save me." Long Chen was about to move, but upon hearing this, he snorted, looked at the bald old man and said, "You know what I need, I'll let you deal with them, but you better give me an explanation." Lu Weitian and Lu Tianyu's divine souls, Long Chen's left hand grabbed the air, and sent them to the bald old man. Seeing this, the bald old man didn't have any intention of restraining the two of them, and instead, there seemed to be thunder in his eyes, and Tao rhymes circulated. Rumble. Above the two divine souls, two thick lightning bolts descended from the sky, and instantly destroyed their divine souls. The bald old man cupped his fists at Long Chen and said, "Don't worry, this old man knows what you need, it's not in the hands of the two of them." Although Long Chen didn't mention the emperor's remains, the old man had already deduced a few things from the fate of Lu Tianyu and Lu Weitian that he left behind. Chapter 914. Building Pavilion. On the Xian Street there was a medium-sized restaurant that belonged to the building pavilion. Inside the building, the bald old man and Yun Mei finally reached an agreement on a series of cooperation. The two of them had a very pleasant conversation. The bald old man stared at Yun Mei and praised, "Your series of elixirs really opened my eyes. No wonder the Sea of Clouds shop could become so famous in the Yellow Street in such a short period of time. I just simulated the scene of a battle between cultivators of the same level and packaged the elixirs for sale." "Thank you for your praise, Elder Huang," Yun Mei replied. The two of them had a pleasant conversation. Yun Mei then said, "Sister Lanwei and I will go out to deal with the Sea of Clouds shop." Jean Lanwei nodded and left the building with Yun Mei. After the two of them left, Elder Su waved his hand and signaled for the others to leave. Only Long Chen remained in his seat. Long Chen didn't mention the Sovereign Lord's body. He just said indifferently, "Speak, tell me what you know." The bald old man glanced at Long Chen and lowered his voice. "The reason why you didn't kill Lu Weitian and his son Lu Tianyu was because you only found a part of a corpse." Long Chen's eyes suddenly shrank. This old man was indeed not lying. He signaled for the old man to continue. The old man's eyes flashed and a cold wind blew. The entire room was surrounded by cold wind. The wind was like an array that isolated the room. The old man then opened his mouth and said, "That thing was originally in Lu Weishan's hands. After that, he handed it over to his son Lu Tianyu. If I'm not wrong, that thing should be in the hands of the Sovereign Lord Huang Qihim?" Long Chen's face suddenly darkened. If the bald old man's words were true, it meant that the Sovereign Lord's body was no longer in Shanghai City. It was in the Void Soul Mountain. After the old man finished speaking, he didn't wait for Long Chen to speak. He slowly stood up from his seat. A drop of dark red blood appeared on his right index finger. With a flick of his finger, the drop of blood rose into the air and split into two clouds of blood mist before rushing into his eyes. The blood-red light in the old man's eyes flickered like a flame. Then, he suddenly closed his eyes and two images flew out from his eyes. Amidst the blood threads, Lu Tianyu handed a jade box to a person in a yellow robe. The old man mumbled, "There is no need for you to doubt my words." Before Supreme Sovereign Huang Qi left the encampment for the Void Soul Tribulation Mountain, he had met Lu Tianyu. Lu Tianyu also became a crowned emperor after that. Long Chen nodded, let out a long sigh, and said in a deep voice, "That's the end of this matter. The enmity between the Cloud Sea Shop and the Lu Yu Chamber of Commerce is also over." Since there was no emperor's body here, Long Chen could only look for the Imperial Academy to find a solution. Long Chen turned around and pushed the door open. Just as he was about to leave, he turned around and said, "Remember what I said just now, or I'll take your life even if I have to go against ancient sage Shanghai." After saying that, Long Chen disappeared outside the door. Plop! As soon as Long Chen left, the old man sat down on a chair. His loose robe was already soaked in sweat. He muttered to himself, "This calamity is finally over." On the other side, Long Chen brought Yun Mei and Jean Lanue back to Yun Mei's courtyard. In the courtyard, many elders of the Yun family and many shopkeepers of the Cloud Sea shop stood up and bowed, looking very excited. The battle between Long Chen and the Lu Yu Chamber of Commerce had already spread throughout the Yellow Street. After a series of instructions, Yun Mei ordered everyone to prepare for the next application for the Black Street and find a way to recruit Emperor-level alchemists. Seeing that the sky was getting dark, several elders of the Yun family gave each other a look and left. In the blink of an eye, only Long Chen, Yun Mei and Jean Lanue were left in the courtyard. As soon as everyone left, Yun Mei's serious expression was gone. She directly pulled Long Chen's hand over her waist and said charmingly, "Husband, think about how Sister Lanue and I can repay you today." Before Long Chen said anything, Jean Lanue thought of the intoxicating scene of the three of them yesterday. Her face suddenly turned red and she glared at Yun Mei and said, "Who wants to repay him? You two go play by yourselves." Jean Lanue turned around and went straight to the courtyard. In the courtyard, Long Chen shook his head and laughed. He held Yun Mei's waist and patted it intimately. He teased, "Now there are only two of us. It seems that only you can repay me. Let's go. Little girl, let me take you to bathe and change your clothes. Let's play in the water for a while." Yun Mei put her right hand around Long Chen's neck and her left hand on her waist, pretending to be a man. Long Chen's gloomy mood because he didn't find the Emperor's body was swept away. He directly carried Yun Mei and walked into the room. For the first time, Yun Mei bathed him like a virtuous wife. In the past, the one who did this for Long Chen the most was Qing Xian. "Do you miss Sister Qing Xian? Next time when you go back, you must bring me and Sister Lanue together. We will definitely have a lot of fun. Isn't that right, Uncle?" Yun Mei said as she stuck herself to Long Chen's back. Long Chen smiled and pulled her into the water. Laughter and laughter could be heard all around. Finally, Yun Mei pushed Long Chen onto the bed and whispered in his ear, "Today you really touched me. Let Mei repay you." Yun Mei's words and actions, as well as her seductive eyes, were seductive to the bone. On the other side, Jean Lanue's ears were filled with the sounds of men and women. Her face was flushed red and she said, "Yun Mei did it on purpose." The next morning, when Long Chen walked out of the room, he saw Jean Lanue walking towards him. Jean Lanue glared at Long Chen and said, "This time, you will suppress your cultivation to the Tao Emperor realm. I am going to practice my combat techniques." Cough cough. Long Chen coughed dryly and said, "You are not trying to practice your combat techniques. I think you are trying to kill your husband." Dong dong dong. Before Jean Lanue could reply, there were continuous knocking sounds coming from the door. "Come in." Jean Lanue looked as if she was going to let Long Chen go. The people knocking on the door were a few elders from the Yun family. They were all very excited and wanted to look for Yun Mei. Yun Mei had just walked out of the room. Although she was surprised to see so many elders, she did not give them a chance to speak. Yun Mei said, "You guys can settle everything for the next few days. There is no need to look for me. You can all go out." The few of them nodded. Just as they stepped into the courtyard, they turned back. Long Chen looked at Yun Mei and said, "Why? Aren't you afraid of something important? What urgent matter could there be? Wasn't it because you were too impressive yesterday?" Yun Mei walked up and spoke in a serious tone. Her gaze swept across Long Chen without any restraint. Jean Lanue held her forehead and thought that Yun Mei was really worthy of her name. Chapter 9:15. Day by day, Long Chen didn't mention anything about leaving and didn't contact the Imperial Academy. At sunrise, before Jean Lanue and Yun Mei got up, Long Chen was about to get up. Yun Mei suddenly reached out and pulled him back. "Sleep a bit more, I have to go to the shop today, otherwise I'll suffer a huge loss." Yun Mei joked. Long Chen nodded. Unveil knew it was time to let him go. The three hugged each other on the bed. Sunset. Unveil and Jean Lannier had already prepared food and wine. Shu San had also arrived at the courtyard. Shu San stared at Long Chen and said, "Did you know I was in the North Foot territory? I've only been back for 2 days and you're already looking for me. The Imperial Academy is closer to you, so, naturally, I tried to find you. You should know what I want to ask." Long Chen smiled. Shu San nodded. He was the one who told Long Chen the whereabouts of Lu Weitian and the other 2 emperors' body parts. Now that Long Chen was in Shanghai City in the North Foot territory, his intention was clear. TSK, your current strength is related to the emperor's body parts? Looks like we can't put you on the list, otherwise it'll be a mess. Shu San seemed to only be thinking about his own list. He stared at Long Chen and scanned him back and forth. His hands were constantly recording something. After Long Chen drank a pot of wine, Shu San said, "There's no emperor's body parts in the North Foot territory that you want, Long Chen's hand that was holding the wine suddenly stopped in the air. "I told you about these 3 people based on your cultivation at that time, but I didn't expect you to take them all down so quickly." Just as Shu San said, these 3 people's cultivation progressively increased, and their battle strength wasn't high. The strongest, Lu Weitian, was also from Shanghai City and only had a cultivation level. Even though Long Chen was not at his current level, he still had a chance to take him down if he used some trick. Shu San continued, "At that time, there were other people in the North Foot territory who had the body of an imperial lord. With your current battle prowess you can take it, but they are no longer in the North Foot territory." Shu San's words made Long Chen frown. He drank the wine in one gulp and said in a deep voice, "Void Soul Mountain." Shu San nodded and replied, "Although the North Foot realm is not the center of the ancient sacred god world, when the Emperor Lord's body fell, part of his body fell here from the ancient sacred mountain. 70% of them are controlled by the venerable sovereigns, but a small portion is kept by the sovereign emperors." Long Chen nodded. Most of the people in the North Foot territory who could obtain the sovereign lord's body weren't weak, so it was reasonable for them to go to the Void Soul Mountain under the Divine King's command. Seeing Long Chen's gloomy expression, Shu San shook his head and said, "It's best if you don't go to the Void Soul Mountain now. It's a graveyard for the strong, Divine King Bone Kill and the Ethereal King had gathered at the Void Soul Mountain. These 2 could control the life and death of countless people in the North Foot territory, not to mention that they were accompanied by all the venerable sovereigns in the North Foot territory." Shu San's advice wasn't wrong. Even though Long Chen was a peak stage sovereign emperor, he might not be able to survive the Void Soul Mountain. Long Chen said in a deep voice, "Tell me all the people you know who have the body of an imperial lord." Shu San stared at Long Chen. Seeing the determination in his eyes, he could only sigh and leave behind a jade slip. Before Shu San left, he said to Long Chen, "Stay away from the Ethereal King. I'm afraid this person is more dangerous than Divine King Bone Kill." Long Chen kept the jade slip and memorized Shu San's words in his heart. Jean Lannier and Unveil, who were holding the food in their hands, were stunned. Jean Lannier directly said, "Let's go. We'll leave the North Foot territory first. The thing you're looking for might not only be in the North Foot territory. Void Soul Mountain, you can't go to the Void Soul Mountain." This time, even Unveil couldn't help but sternly say to Long Chen. Long Chen's current battle strength was enough to sweep through the North Foot territory without any venerable sovereigns. However, the Void Soul Mountain was different. There were countless venerable sovereigns gathered in the Void Soul Mountain. Most of the venerable sovereigns who followed the venerable sovereigns had peak battle strength among the venerable sovereigns. There was one more thing that Jean Lannier didn't say. That was the human Dao Sovereign. The human Dao Sovereign was currently in the Void Soul Mountain. If Long Chen went there, wouldn't he be courting death? Long Chen didn't respond to their words. He just smiled and said, sit down and eat. The next day, Long Chen had already left Shanghai City before dawn. Zhan Lanwei and Yun Mei stood on the city wall and looked in the direction Long Chen left. The corners of their eyes were gradually turning red. Yun Mei directly scolded, "If this guy comes back, let him sleep alone." Zhan Lanwei stood aside and didn't chase after Long Chen. If the Void Soul Mountain was a tiger's den to Long Chen, then it was a hell of death to her. With so many experts gathered, if she went to the Void Soul Mountain, even Sovereign Zhan Kuang might not be able to guarantee her survival. After Long Chen left, Shu San appeared in the sky above Shanghai City with a bitter smile on his face. After half an hour, Shu San's figure appeared in the Hall of Imperial Learning. Ever since the Hall of Imperial Learning came to the ancient sacred divine world, it didn't seem to be disturbed at all. The Hall of Imperial Learning stood at a height of more than 100,000 meters above the endless wilderness. It was incomparably magnificent. In the hall, a child's body was changing unpredictably. He sometimes turned into an old man and sometimes a young man. This person was the Hall Master of Imperial Learning. He muttered, "That Long Chen actually dares to go to the Void Soul Mountain. Shu San, don't go to the Nine Treasures realm. Go with him to the Void Soul Mountain. While you're at it, create a record of the Battle of the Void Soul Mountain in the Northfoot realm. How about it?" Just as he finished speaking, he realized that Shu San had already disappeared. He only left behind a jade slip that wrote, "Leave, not going. First Elder, Second Elder you." Before he could finish his sentence, the hall was already empty. Looking at the empty hall, the Hall Master of Imperial Learning shook his head and said, "All of you only think about the list in your hands. But our friend can't die." After he finished speaking, the Grand Elder took a step forward and disappeared from the hall. After he left for a few breaths, the Hall of Imperial Learning was in an uproar. The Grand Elder, actually left the palace. The Hall of Imperial Learning was filled with exclamations. It seemed that the Grand Elder leaving the Hall of Imperial Learning was an extremely important matter. On the other side, Long Chen went straight to the Void Soul Mountain. When he saw the jade slip that Shu San gave him, he couldn't help but be stunned. Chapter 9:16. The Hollow Soul Mountain was the largest mountain range in the Northfoot Territory. It occupied almost 1/10 of the Northfoot Territory. It was also where the Ethereal King's Void God Temple was located. There were 18 sovereigns stationed in the Void God Temple. All of them were peak sovereigns and had been crowned by the Ethereal King. Every one of them leaving the Void Soul Mountain was enough to shake the Northern Foot Territory. After Long Chen left Shanghai City, he didn't stop to go to the Void Soul Mountain. The Void Soul Mountain was very far from Shanghai City. Even if Long Chen went all out, it would take him at least a few months. In fact, Long Chen's decision to go to the Void Soul Mountain was not reckless. The most important thing was that the Imperial College only had information about the sovereign's remains in the Northern Foot Territory. If he left the Northern Foot Territory, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack to find so many sovereigns' remains. Secondly, there was the evil bone technique left in his body by the Bone Kill God King. Although the technique was suppressed by the Primal Chaos Golden Codex, it could not be completely removed. On the other hand, according to Tian Shuzi, the subordinate of the human Tao sovereign, if he did not die, he would meet the Bone Kill God King soon. If that was true, he might end up making a fool of himself by leaving the Northern Foot Territory. Long Chen did not choose to take a detour, nor did he go to a remote area. If he changed directions at such a distance, it would cause him to take a lot of unnecessary detours. However, Long Chen did not meet anyone along the way. After all, everyone was avoiding the Void Soul Mountain. A month passed in the blink of an eye. He gradually met many sovereigns, but the scene was very frightening. In the past month, he met 7 sovereigns. 6 of them were implanted with the evil bone technique, which constantly gnawed at their flesh. The interval between the evil bone technique's activation is getting shorter and shorter. It has to be suppressed once every day. If I don't have something to resist it, I'm afraid I'll fall into endless torture every day. Long Chen looked at the green light on his left arm and frowned. Gu Kill God King left the White Bone Forbidden region and headed towards the Void Soul Calamity Mountain. No one knew how many imperial emperors he had planted the evil bone art on. When Long Chen reached the second month of his journey, he looked up at the sky and could not help but feel apprehensive. At this moment, he was still more than a month away from the Void Soul Mountain, but he could already see a mountain peak faintly. The mountain seemed real and illusory at the same time. It was like a mirage that stretched across the sky, and there seemed to be countless lightning snakes winding around it. Just as Long Chen was about to hurry on his way, he saw an emperor he had seen before turn back and begin to circle to the left. Although this person was a member of the god race born from a deviant origin, his battle techniques and soul skills seemed to be able to increase his speed. His movement was even faster than Long Chen's. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afflicted with the evil bone technique, which acted up every day, Long Chen wouldn't have been able to catch up to him. Brother, are you also affected by the evil bone technique? Can you tell me a thing or two about it so that I can relieve some of the pain? This person approached with green light flickering in his eyes. The evil bone technique was actually about to act up again. Long Chen frowned slightly. Although he looked at this person with some sympathy, he still shook his head. The evil bone technique would not take this person's life. Long Chen was not so kind as to reveal the Primal Chaos Golden Codex just to relieve some of his pain. Just as Long Chen's voice fell, this person curled up on the ground in pain. The divine light around his body scattered in all directions, sometimes violent and sometimes filled with evil. When his eyes were completely covered by the green light, he began to gnaw on his own flesh and blood. Long Chen could not help but retreat dozens of meters. This scene was really too terrifying. I have a formation pattern here. Try it. Whether it's useful or not will depend on your luck. Long Chen had an idea. He drew the formation pattern that he had imprinted on the divine statue in the White Bone Forbidden region and slapped it towards this person. Half of this person's left arm was only left with white bones. He did not hesitate to store the formation pattern in his sea of consciousness. If it was under normal circumstances, then no imperial monarch would act so rashly. This person was still gnawing on his own flesh. In the blink of an eye, 15 minutes had passed. Half of his body was only left with white bones. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Suddenly, a pure divine light flickered around him and actually dispersed the green light in his eyes. It's useful. It's actually useful. This emperor was almost crazy. He was so happy that he actually cried. His flesh and blood rapidly regenerated. When he had completely recovered, he looked at Long Chen and bowed deeply. Long Chen was a little surprised that this formation pattern could have such an effect. However, his attempt was not without reason. After all, this formation pattern was left behind by the immortal Buddha clan. The immeasurable emperor could resist the evil bone technique. This evil bone technique is becoming more and more common. Now, no matter what, we have to go to the Void Soul Mountain and fight. Otherwise, we will be tortured to death sooner or later. That person shouted himself hoarse. It was as if he had regarded Long Chen as a kindred spirit. Long Chen did not want to have too much interaction with this person. He had already done his duty by handing over the formation to him. Seeing that Long Chen was still rushing forward, this person immediately called out to Long Chen and said, "Sir, please wait. Although the formation pattern you gave me can't completely resist the evil bone technique, it can reduce my pain. If you trust me, then follow me and take a detour. Don't go any further." Long Chen paused. He also had some doubts about this person who had just turned back. Now, there were more than 10 mountains in front of them. If they took a detour, it would take at least more than 10 days. This person had been tortured to this extent by the evil bone technique, but he still wanted to take a detour. You will know when you see it. After this person finished speaking, he waved his hand and left a soul brand in the air. He turned around and walked away, as if he did not want to waste any more time. Long Chun caught the soul brand. With the Emperor Lord's remnant soul, he was not afraid that this person would do something to it. The soul brand entered the knowledge sea, and a scene suddenly appeared in Long Chen's mind. In the 10 mountains in front of them there was a huge sealing array. The golden light of this array was like a tide, covering 5 of the mountains. In the sealing array, one could clearly see that nearly 20 emperors had their chests and abdomens pierced through by chains. On the other end of the chain was a gigantic carriage that radiated with a silver light. On both sides of the carriage, there were 4 tens of thousands of python bones, each of which seemed to have a life of its own. Directly above the carriage was a magnificent palanquin that was dozens of meters long. In the palanquin, an old man could be faintly seen sitting on it. There was also a person lying at his feet respectfully. Seeing this, Long Chen was suddenly stunned. His expression became a little strange. Chapter 9:17. In the 10 mountains, the immeasurable emperor was very gloomy. Ever since he met Long Chen, he had fallen from the peak of his life to the abyss of human life. Ever since Long Chen caused a ruckus in the 9 Yang God clan and left his origin aura behind, he had spent almost every day being hunted down. If it were not for the countless artifacts in his hands, he would have died many times over. In order to save his life, he finally chose to move towards the Void Soul Mountain. He wanted to use the power of the Bone-Kill Divine King and the Ethereal King to force his pursuers to retreat. However, he never expected that although the number of emperors chasing him had decreased, he would once again fall into another crisis, and that was the old man in front of him. As soon as he and the emperors chasing him entered the mountains, they were directly suppressed by the sealing formation. More than 20 emperors were all pierced through their bodies by a strange chain artifact and used to pull a carriage. The old man's combat strength was so terrifying that he and the other emperors did not have the slightest intention of resisting. On the other side, Long Chen carefully entered the mountains. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he was really unwilling to waste more than 10 days to go around. Long Chen walked for less than a day. Standing at the top of the first mountain, he saw the mighty sealing formation from afar. His speed became slower and slower until he finally came to a stop. "Master, can you feel this person's aura? Is he really related to the Bone-Kill Divine King? Can you find a way to hide his aura and pass through the formation?" Long Chen asked the Emperor Lord's remnant soul. The Emperor Lord's remnant soul signaled Long Chen to stop, and a faint soul power came from Long Chen's forehead. This soul power was very strange. Even if it came from Long Chen's forehead, he could not feel it at all, but it seemed indestructible. After a while, the Emperor Lord's remnant soul suddenly said, "This old man is a skeleton creature, but he has the cultivation of an emperor. However, he has been taken over by another emperor." Emperor? Long Chen subconsciously took a few steps back. If this person really had the cultivation of an emperor, he could only go around. Although his combat strength was strong, as long as he hadn't reached the emperor realm, it was impossible for him to fight against an emperor. Long Chen turned around and was about to leave, but the Sovereign Lord's remnant soul suddenly stopped him and said, "There's no need to go around. This formation has completely sealed off the space here. It won't cause any harm to you. As long as you don't take the initiative to sink into the formation, it'll be fine. You can safely fly over the formation. In this way, although you'll be delayed for a few days, it's far more convenient than going around. In fact, as long as I take some risks and conceal your soul's aura, I may be able to kill these 2 emperors at the same time." Without any hesitation, Long Chen chose to fly over from above. These two venerable sovereigns did not have the remains of their sovereign lord, so Long Chen did not want to risk his life here. He could almost guess what the Tao Emperor's remnant soul was talking about. That was the divine soul. Currently, there were two divine souls fighting for the body of the old venerable sovereign. If Long Chen took advantage of the situation with the sovereign lord's remnant soul, he would have a chance to kill both of them, but the risk was very clear. Once the two of them had a chance to escape, the two venerable sovereigns' divine souls would be enough to easily suppress him. Thinking of this, Long Chen did not hesitate and sped up toward the mountain range in front of him. At sunrise the next day, the ceiling formation was already in front of him. Long Chen did not stop at all and suddenly flew up into the sky. The entire formation started from the second mountain and covered the 4 mountains behind it. Behind the formation, 4 more mountains could be vaguely seen. Adding the one that Long Chen had crossed in a day and a night, there were a total of 10 mountains. If he didn't go around, it would only take him more than 10 days to cross these 10 mountains. Once he went around, the time would double. After all, this formation covered a large area. In comparison, flying over the formation would take 7 or 8 days less than going around. Xiu xiu xiu. Long Chen did not hesitate and directly stepped on the formation's ripples and flew up. The ceiling formation rippled like ripples on the surface of a calm lake. Roar. As soon as Long Chen stepped on the formation, countless skeletal beasts rushed out from the ground and their roars resounded through the world. The magnificent palanquin that treated more than 20 venerable sovereigns like cattle and horses suddenly stopped. The old man and the immeasurable emperor looked at Long Chen above the formation at the same time. The giant skeletal beasts charged toward Long Chen from the ground, but they stopped when they were about 3,000 feet away from the leaping path formation. Long Chen did not stop from beginning to end. He trusted the sovereign lord's remnant soul very much. Now, he also saw that something was wrong. This ceiling formation was not used to suppress outsiders, but to suppress the many skeletal beasts inside and the old man on the palanquin. Otherwise, they would not have left this place until now. It's you, you heartless bastard. This poor monk is the immeasurable longevity Buddha of 18 generations of your ancestors. The immeasurable emperor, who was originally prostrating in front of the old man, could not help but jump up and curse when he saw Long Chen. If it were not for Long Chen's actions in the 9 Yang God clan, the immeasurable emperor would not have ended up like this. Ever since he met Long Chen, he had not had a good day. Long Chen flew above the formation and looked at the immeasurable emperor through the ripples. He could not help but smile and imitated the immeasurable emperor's tone. Immeasurable longevity Buddha, benefactor, you are mistaken. Everything is fate, fate? The immeasurable emperor naturally saw Long Chen's ridicule and was so angry that smoke rose from the top of his head. Fate my ass. If I leave this place, I will dig up the graves of 18 generations of your ancestors. Buzz. As soon as the immeasurable emperor finished speaking, he seemed to be suppressed by an enormous aura and was once again pressed to the ground. He was prostrating himself in admiration. Soon after, the old man on the carriage slowly stood up and raised his head to look at Long Chen. Only then did Long Chen see the old man's appearance clearly. Nearly half of his body was made of white bones, while the other side was congealed with flesh and blood, as if it was regenerating. The strangest thing about him was his eyes. The color of his pupils was completely different. The left pupil was an extremely deep cobalt blue, while the right pupil was deathly white. As expected, this old man was indeed an emperor-level skeletal creature, and there was indeed the soul of another human race's emperor-level soul in his body. 2 venerable sovereigns, your skeletal bodies are about to be destroyed. Those 20 or so emperors are too weak. When the time comes, won't it be a terrible thing if I am the only one left with a spare body? The immeasurable emperor lay on the ground and laughed in embarrassment. Why don't we capture this guy as well? He is said to be from the Tianyuan divine clan. He will definitely be able to display 70 to 80% of your strength. Even if he is restricted by many laws, he might still be able to continue breaking through. Chapter 9:18. The immeasurable emperor truly hated Long Chen to the core. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken such a risk and spouted nonsense. Long Chen finally understood why the immeasurable monarch had been prostrating himself in front of the old man out of all the monarchs present. It turned out that he was being used as a substitute by the two old men. If the possession failed, they could at least settle for the second best and enter his body. Of course, whether or not the immeasurable emperor's body would be completely destroyed would depend on fate. The old man was actually moved by the immeasurable emperor's words. His originally strange aura calmed down, and the light in his eyes fell on Long Chen. Long Chen's body stiffened, and he suddenly felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. So strong. This skeletal creature's original cultivation was probably no lower than the mid-stage emperor realm. Thinking of this, Long Chen couldn't help but quicken his pace. It seemed that the Emperor Realm Master who wanted to possess his body was probably at the same level as him. If these two powerful emperors fell into the battle array, Long Chen's situation would probably be the same as the immeasurable emperor's. This array has been sealed. If he doesn't take the initiative to enter the array, I can't do anything to him. The old man's voice was sometimes cold and sometimes like a ghost's howl, making people shudder. The immeasurable emperor couldn't help but shout, F***CKU. He clearly remembered that when he was chased by more than 20 emperors, he was suppressed when he was 10,000 meters away from the array. Now, this guy was telling him that the array had been completely sealed. Bang! As soon as the immeasurable emperor finished speaking, a powerful pressure pressed down on the carriage. The two wills in the old man's body clearly didn't want to take his life. They didn't even have the slightest intention of hurting him. If you break this array, I'll give you this skeletal body. The old man hissed like a ghost, as if he was talking to himself. The old man's eyes were still fixed on Long Chen. After a while, he spoke again. Even if you don't disturb me, it will take at least 10 days to break this array. By then, he will have already left this place. This person's aura is continuous, his physical strength is as boundless as the sea, and his divine power is like the scorching sun. If I can get out of this array, I won't need your skeletal body. Their eyes flashed. Long Chen's back was on pins and needles. He couldn't help but ask the Emperor Lord's remnant soul, can this array really seal this emperor? The Sovereign Master's remnant soul snorted coldly and said, this formation uses the power of these 5 mountains as its base and refines the countless living beings within them as support. If I hadn't deliberately left some flaws in it, I would have been able to keep this person here for decades. Long Chen came to a sudden realization. In that case, the 5 mountains were the cage that trapped the old man. The human would be able to escape from this formation after 10 days of successful possession, but if the skeletal creature managed to protect itself in the end, it would be trapped here for at least a few decades. Hearing the Emperor Lord's words, Long Chen was completely relieved. He continued to step on the array and rushed toward the courtyard. Break the array, break the array, I can let the skeletal creature's soul leave this array. The immeasurable emperor suddenly climbed up from the ground. Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, he was caught by the old man and pulled in front of him. Tell me how to leave this array. The old man's cold voice came out of his mouth. Compared to the skeletal creature's body, he was more interested in Long Chen's body. There were many drawbacks to possession. If it weren't for the fact that his soul was injured, he wouldn't have been able to make it to the desolate ice mountain and wouldn't have taken this path. However, since he wanted to possess a body, Long Chen's body was naturally his first choice. No, I can only send the skeletal creature's soul out. The immeasurable emperor shook his head and paused. You must swear to the undying Tao law that you can't kill me in any way after the skeletal creature leaves. Kiki, although I don't want the human's body, if we continue to fight like this, I'm afraid our souls will vanish. Send me out and I'll give you this skeletal body. The old man's voice became gloomy again. Although he said this, there was a hint of excitement in his words. For some reason, the skeletal creature seemed to be coveting Long Chen's body. Long Chen flew up rapidly. He heard the immeasurable monarch and the old man's words, but his footsteps didn't speed up. Instead, they slowed down. He had a strange look on his face, and he couldn't help but smile. The immeasurable emperor wanted to rely on sending the skeletal creature's soul out of the array to resolve the stalemate between the two emperors and save his own life. Let the skeletal creature's soul take over his body? This was simply suicide. The Emperor Remnant's soul couldn't help but sneer. That's good. You don't have to risk your soul rushing into the old man's body to kill them. Courting death? That's all there is to it. Although the Emperor Remnant's soul was only a wisp of obsession, it had been strengthened day by Long Chen's cultivation of the Primal Chaos Golden Codex. However, Long Chen believed that even without the Primal Chaos Golden Codex's nourishment, an Emperor Venerable would still be vulnerable in front of this wisp of obsession. A centipede dies but never falls down. The former ancient sacred world lord's body could evolve into Tao rhymes and seize the fortune of heaven and earth, allowing Long Chen to rise rapidly. A wisp of his soul was not something an Emperor Venerable could shake. As a descendant of the sacred Buddha clan, the immeasurable emperor had done a lot of research on the skeletal creature. After the human old man's soul swore an oath with the undying Tao law, both of their souls left their bodies at the same time. Don't forget your oath. If I don't leave the array, you can't enter my skeletal body. The skeletal creature couldn't help but warn the human old man's soul. He was only a soul now. If the old man entered his body and attacked him with his divine power, he would definitely be defeated. The human old man's soul snorted coldly and nodded in agreement. Senior, if you don't resist, I can send your soul out. The immeasurable emperor took a deep breath. This was not an easy task for him. The skeletal creature's soul stared at the immeasurable emperor and laughed. Descendant of the sacred Buddha clan, if it weren't for your clan, we wouldn't have been sealed for so many years. Actually, your body is not bad. However, compared to that brat outside, you're still too weak. The skeletal creature was not afraid of the immeasurable emperor. After all, in his eyes, the immeasurable emperor was too weak. However, the immeasurable emperor was completely speechless at this moment. The veins on his bald head, which was branded with a scar, could not help but pop out. He never thought that he would be looked down upon at this moment. The immeasurable emperor took a deep breath and put his palms together. This poor monk has one last request. When the time comes, before you take over his body, please help me pass a message to him. Consider it as this poor monk releasing his soul from purgatory. What is it? The skeletal creature's soul slowly landed in front of the immeasurable emperor and dispersed the green light around him. Help me tell him. The immeasurable emperor looked at Long Chen's back from afar and shouted, Long Chen, F***CKU, die. Chapter 9:19. Long Chen's footsteps faltered as he stood rooted to the ground. When he turned around to look, he discovered that the immeasurable sovereign emperor no longer had that earlier shameless appearance. At this moment there seemed to be a Buddha spirit 3 feet above his head, sending down auspicious signs. He put his palms together, and a dazzling divine light gushed out like a tide. Buzz. When he opened his palms, his body gradually became illusory. His entire body became illusory, but at this moment, the auspicious Buddha spirit 3 feet above his head suddenly opened its eyes. The golden Buddha glared at the world. Even though the skeleton creature was prepared, it couldn't help but take a few steps back. The glaring golden Buddha seemed to come alive. Mantras surrounded its body and the Buddha chanted, Angry Buddha spirit transformation. The immeasurable emperor roared. The Buddha spirit roared into the sky, and golden flames burned fiercely, as if it wanted to burn all evil in the world. The Buddha's spirit instantly wrapped around the skeleton creature's soul, and an ear-piercing roar rang out. The skeleton creature couldn't help but show pain on its face. Surrounded by the Buddha spirit, the immeasurable emperor's hands were full of Buddhist runes, and he fiercely attacked the array above him. A strange thing happened. The Buddha spirit captured the skeleton creature's soul and directly passed through the array. The sacred Buddha clan is indeed a bit strange. The venerable emperor old man couldn't help but stare at the immeasurable emperor. This array was personally set up by him. It was incredible that the Buddha spirit's enormous divine power attack could pass through the array and take the skeleton creature's soul away. The divine light around the immeasurable emperor disappeared, and his whole body seemed to have lost all its brilliance. His whole body was as white as a sheet of paper, and there wasn't even a trace of blood. This time, the Buddha spirit had made him pay a great price. Kiki! It's finally out. As soon as it left the array, the skeleton creature's soul suddenly shot out green light in all directions, tearing the Buddha spirit apart. The sacred Buddha clan can't be left alive. Otherwise, when he reaches the venerable emperor realm, it'll be terrible. Fortunately, a fellow like you passed by. Otherwise, if I were to continue entangling with that fellow, I'm afraid I would really be destroyed together with him. Now, I'll seize your body first, and then find an army of skeletons to deal with him. The skeletal creature's divine soul glowed with a green light, exuding a sense of evil. He flew towards Long Chen, and in a flash, his spirit sealed off Long Chen from all directions. Buzz! Long Chen's complexion suddenly changed, and he couldn't help but feel even more reverence for the emperor. This skeletal creature was only a soul now, but he still felt a deep sense of fear when he looked at it. He could be said to be invincible among the imperial emperors, but facing the divine soul of a venerable sovereign was enough to suffocate him. Is this the terror of an emperor realm master? Long Chen murmured in his heart, pretending to be frightened as he tried to resist. If this skeletal creature really wanted to kill Long Chen with its divine soul, it would have to fight to the death today. However, if it wanted to seize Long Chen's body, it naturally couldn't kill him. Even his soul could only be killed inside his body. Before Long Chen could make a move, he felt an endless pressure coming at him from all directions. The skeletal creature's divine soul grabbed at the air, and rays of divine light condensed, turning into thousands of chains that wrapped around Long Chen. These chains were formed from divine power, but they were almost solid. They even exuded a powerful source strength to suppress the divine power in Long Chen's body. Long Chen frantically operated the primal chaos golden codex, and the pressure around him decreased sharply, but on the surface there was no change. On the other side, the immeasurable emperor threw more than 10 pills into his mouth in a row, and only then did his complexion improve slightly. The old man next to him stared at the immeasurable emperor and said, "Immeasurable emperor, I've heard of this name before." The immeasurable emperor heard this and hurriedly said, "My words carry little weight. How could the emperor realm master have heard of me? It's better to open the array as soon as possible, and you and I can leave." The old emperor realm master stared at the immeasurable emperor with a thoughtful expression. As he spoke, the skeletal creature's body was covered in flesh and blood, and it returned to an ordinary body. He seemed to have many thoughts, and then he said, "Although this skeletal body is an emperor realm master's body, and my divine soul can reside in it, I can't make any more breakthroughs in this life. My cultivation will gradually disappear, and I may even be killed by the inextinguishable law. Wait for me to open the array, and you will leave with me. If I die, there are some things I want you to do for me." The immeasurable emperor's face turned bitter when he heard this. He didn't know what the old man was thinking, but he could only nod and agree. He turned his gaze to Long Chen, who was outside the array, and saw that Long Chen had been covered by the Emperor Realm's skeletal creature's divine soul. Only then did he feel a little better. The immeasurable Emperor murmured, "Amateus Buddha, benefactor Long Chen has been through a lot, and now he has reached nirvana. He can even save the lives of this poor monk and the two emperors. It's a blessing, a blessing." The old man next to the immeasurable emperor looked at him coldly and said, "They say that you are not only wicked, but I don't think so, you are also very shameless. I'm about to completely condense my physical body. Help me break this array and we can get out in 8 or 9 days at most. Otherwise, this guy will come with an army of skeletons after he takes over your body, and both of us will die here." The immeasurable emperor immediately nodded and moved at the same time as the old man. On the other side, the skeletal creature's divine soul suddenly began to shrink from all directions, and he said playfully, "TSK, TSK, let me devour your divine soul first." After saying this, his divine soul wrapped around Long Chen's body in an instant, and then disappeared from the surface of the body outside the chains. When his divine soul completely disappeared from Long Chen's body, Long Chen's originally frightened look disappeared without a trace, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. The skeletal creature's divine soul was like a sharp blade, rushing straight toward Long Chen's knowledge sea. He wanted to first destroy Long Chen's own consciousness, and then assimilate his divine soul, so that he could completely take over his body. "How dare you be so presumptuous in front of this king?" The voice of the Emperor Realm's remnant soul came out of Long Chen's divine soul, and in the next moment, it fell into the divine soul of the skeletal creature. The divine soul of the skeletal creature suddenly stagnated under this explosive voice, as if it had been struck by lightning. The originally indestructible divine soul began to weaken at a speed visible to the naked eye. What is this thing? You are not the emperor." The divine soul of the skeletal creature roared wildly, and wanted to leave Long Chen's body. Buzz. The chaotic golden codex in Long Chen's divine soul was operating rapidly, and his divine soul immediately covered his body, turning into an iron wall, trapping the divine soul of the skeletal creature in his body. The divine soul of the skeletal creature was completely flustered, and from within Long Chen's knowledge sea, a dim light fell toward him. This dim light was so small that it was almost imperceptible, but it made the skeletal creature feel an unprecedented threat. Chapter 920. In the blink of an eye, the soul of the skeletal creature was riddled with holes in Long Chen's body. The wisp of dim light destroyed everything in its path. In the blink of an eye, the Emperor Realm Master's soul had completely disappeared without a trace, torn apart by the dim light. Master is so powerful that you can kill an Emperor Realm Master with just a wisp of your soul force. Long Chen breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the soul of the skeletal creature being torn apart. He complimented the Emperor Lord's remnant soul. The Emperor Lord's remnant soul snorted coldly, "Don't flatter me. This guy is an Emperor Realm Master after all. Although I tore his soul apart, I also stripped all of his source energy. Keep this source energy well. When the time comes, you can find a remnant body to merge with. If you're lucky, you should have the opportunity to step into the Emperor Realm. It'll save you a lot of effort." Long Chen laughed embarrassedly. He knew that if the Emperor Lord's remnant soul didn't want to waste a single wisp of his soul force, he would have been able to kill this Emperor Realm Master's soul in the blink of an eye. Long Chen moved his right hand slightly and put a pure green light into his storage ring. On the other side, the immeasurable Emperor and the old Emperor Realm Master were still trying to break the sealing array. When they saw Long Chen looking at them, they were stunned. The old Emperor Realm Master couldn't help but stop his movements and said in a deep voice, "I didn't expect this Emperor Realm Master's soul to be so weak. He was taken over in such a short time." The immeasurable Emperor turned around and looked at Long Chen with his palms together. He asked loudly, "Senior, can you help me release this benefactor's soul?" The corner of Long Chen's mouth curled into a smile. He could not help but look at the immeasurable emperor playfully. He said indifferently, "What a pity! Your words of transcendence did not become the last thing I heard before I died." Buzz. As Long Chen's voice fell, the immeasurable emperor and the Emperor Realm Master were both stunned and immediately stared at Long Chen. The old Emperor Realm Master couldn't help but cry out, You're still the Emperor Realm Master from before?" The Emperor Realm Skeleton Realm Master failed to take over. An Emperor Realm Master had failed to take over the body of an Emperor Realm Master. Such a thing had almost never happened before. When one's cultivation reached the sovereign realm, their divine souls were enough to suppress any sovereign emperor. The venerable emperor stared at Long Chen, his eyes suddenly flickering with light as he said in a deep voice, "Since your excellency was able to survive the venerable emperor's possession, it means that either your soul far surpasses the venerable emperor's or you possess a soul-type artifact that surpasses an ancestral artifact." The old venerable sovereign's words puzzled immeasurable monarch and Long Chen. They didn't know what he meant. Long Chen frowned slightly. He couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this person. After all, he couldn't break this array in a short period of time. He turned around and prepared to continue his journey. "Sir, please wait," the venerable sovereign suddenly called out to Long Chen. Long Chen had no intention of stopping. He couldn't open the sealing formation in a short time, and it would take a few days for the people inside to come out. Since this matter didn't pose a threat to him, he didn't want to waste time here. He had no intention of stopping. The White Bone Emperor Realm Master's soul was a daunting experience for him, but it wasn't dangerous at all. He just took it as an opportunity. After all, he was now a late-stage Emperor Realm Master and had been crowned. It was very important to him when he would step into the Emperor Realm. Once he stepped into the Emperor Realm, even if he couldn't defeat a human Emperor Realm Master, he would be able to deal with them. "Your Excellency, please wait a moment. I have a great opportunity to give you. Please save my young master." The Emperor Realm Old Man's voice echoed through the sealing array and into Long Chen's ears. Long Chen slowed down a little, but he didn't stop. He asked the old man through the formation, "Your young master? What is his cultivation? Why do you want me to save him? What kind of opportunity can you give me?" When the old man saw Long Chen stop, he directly flew into the air and arrived at Long Chen's feet. There was only a divine power barrier formed by the sealing formation between the two of them. The old man's dispirited appearance when he was talking to the immeasurable emperor was completely different. Instead, he said with a bright expression, "As long as you save my young master will let you dominate the North Foot realm. You are only an Emperor Realm Master now. If my young master returns to the clan alive, he will definitely give you the opportunity to become a divine king." Long Chen suddenly stopped and turned around to look at the old man. The old man's words were truly shocking and attracted Long Chen's attention. The immeasurable emperor in the distance was a little stunned at this moment. He seemed to have been stunned by the old man's words. Dominate the North Foot realm and help an Emperor Realm Master step into the Emperor Realm. Even someone like God King Voidsoul probably wouldn't dare to say those words. Long Chen stared at the old man and asked in a deep voice, "If I'm not wrong, you should be an Emperor Realm Master in the North Foot realm. Why do you make such a promise?" The strongest person in the North Foot realm was the Ethereal King, and now there was the Bone Kill Divine King. These two divine kings were already at the peak of the North Foot realm. Not just anyone would dare to say they could dominate the North Foot realm. Under the Emperor Lord's remnant soul, the old man didn't seem to be lying. However, Long Chen couldn't think of anyone in the North Foot realm who could do what the old man said. When the old man saw Long Chen stop, he immediately let out a sigh of relief. "I have indeed always been in the North Foot realm. However, I am not an Emperor Realm Master under the Ethereal King." Have you heard of the Zhuge Forbidden God clan? Zhuge Forbidden God clan? Long Qin frowned slightly and asked the Emperor Lord's remnant soul in his mind. The Emperor Lord's remnant soul shook his head. Zhuge Forbidden God clan? I have some impression of the Zhuge Fated clan, but they are a divine clan born of chaos. They would never appear in the North Foot realm. Before Long Qin could speak, the immeasurable Emperor cried out involuntarily, You are saying you are from the Zhuge Forbidden God clan? Then why are you in the North Foot realm? Is the young master you are talking about the main branch of the Forbidden God clan? No wonder you can trap an Emperor realm skeleton creature with a formation even though you are only a soul. The old man shook his head. His eyes were still staring at Long Qin. He actually used his divine power to carve inscriptions on his forehead and shouted, I swear by the inextinguishable Tao law that I am telling the truth. As long as you save my young master, as long as the Zhuge Forbidden God clan can do it, we will definitely do it. If you are hurt in the slightest, this old man's entire clan is willing to be implicated by the Tao law. The old man seemed to be very anxious. He repeatedly swore by the inextinguishable Tao law in order to gain Long Qin's trust. Long Qin stared at the old man and frowned. How can you be so sure that I can save your young master? Because if you can kill an Emperor realm spirit in a dozen breaths, then you will definitely be able to save my young master, the old man said excitedly. If it weren't for the existence of this sealing array, he would have stuck to Long Qin's body. Chapter 9:21. When Long Qin heard the old man's reply, he could not help but take a deep breath. The young master that this person mentioned was actually a divine king powerhouse. Long Qin fell silent for a moment. This person had already sworn an oath under the inextinguishable principle, so he could temporarily trust him. However, if his young master was really a divine king powerhouse, his life would be in danger if things changed. The old venerable emperor seemed to have noticed Long Qin's concern. He moved his right hand again, and shadows intertwined in front of Long Qin. Among the shadows, there was a young man standing in the thunderclouds with formation patterns crisscrossing around his body. This person is my young master. He's only alive because of this thunder source life-prolonging formation. As long as you're willing to help him, my young master will naturally swear an oath under the inextinguishable principle, the old venerable emperor continued. Long Qin remained silent and did not answer him. He calmed his mind and began to talk with the venerable emperor's remnant soul. The venerable emperor's remnant soul said to Long Qin, the thunder source life-prolonging formation. This so-called Zhuge Forbidden God clan has a deep understanding of formations. In this regard, they're very similar to the Zhuge Fated clan. However, this person is not from the chaotic divine clan. This person's life is indeed at its end. You can go with him and have a look. The venerable emperor's remnant soul's words made Long Qin feel much more at ease. He nodded and agreed to the old man's request. The old man immediately bowed repeatedly. Although he had the cultivation of an venerable emperor, he was now very respectful to Long Qin. Break the formation, break the formation. He quickly urged the immeasurable emperor to break the formation. The immeasurable emperor's mind fell to the bottom of the valley. He looked at Long Qin with an embarrassed smile and felt a chill run down his spine. After a long while, Long Qin saw that the two of them were not breaking the formation quickly. He said, Mark all the formation eyes and formation bases on the formation. I'll help you break the formation from the outside. The old man's face was slightly stunned. He did not expect Long Qin to have studied formations. Place all the markings I just told you at various places in the formation. The venerable overlord ordered the immeasurable emperor. The immeasurable emperor nodded and bowed as he agreed. Long Qin looked at him with a smile on his face. He had seen the immeasurable emperor's black-bellied shamelessness and even immorality many times. However, This guy did have some tricks up his sleeve. Long Chen had no intention of making things difficult for him at the moment. At the very least, he wanted to keep him alive until he dealt with the evil bones technique. The descendants of the immortal Buddha tribe would definitely have a deep understanding of the Bone Kill God King. As the immeasurable emperor marked the locations of the array eyes, he smiled at Long Chen and said, "Benefactor, we've known each other for a long time. We've been through life and death together. It's really rare, really rare." Long Chen smiled and said indifferently, "It is indeed rare. If it were someone else who had befriended you, they would have died a dozen times over. Benefactor, you're a man of great fortune and destiny. How can you compare to them?" The immeasurable emperor laughed dryly. The three of them worked together to break the array eyes, but it still took them 3 days. During this time, there were some people who wanted to go to the Void Soul Mountain through this place, but when they saw the many chained emperors inside the array eyes, they stopped. Their souls have been devoured by the Bone Kill God King. They're just walking corpses. The venerable overlord motioned for Long Chen to leave. Long Chen nodded and followed behind the venerable overlord. On the other hand, the immeasurable emperor slowed down and said in a low voice, "The two of you still have important matters to attend to. I've only met you by chance, so I'll take my leave." Before he could finish speaking, he saw Long Chen staring at him with a cold smile. He interrupted, "Are you really not going to follow me? I'm afraid your life will be in danger if you travel alone." The immeasurable emperor felt Long Chen's cold gaze, but he didn't dare to take a step back. He was well aware of Long Chen's battle prowess. "The two of you should hurry up. My young master can't wait for long." The venerable overlord looked quite anxious. After he finished speaking, he waved his hand and grabbed the two of them with his divine power, then turned into a rainbow and disappeared into the sky. His speed was probably more than 10 times faster than the Emperor's. The three of them had just crossed the 10 mountain regions and rushed straight up into the clouds. Long Chen and the immeasurable Emperor couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. They immediately became more and more afraid of the venerable overlord in front of them. In a short time, they had already flown tens of thousands of miles high in the sky. The icy aura from all directions had almost completely enveloped them, and there were even endless astral winds that swept past them like blades made of divine power. If the venerable overlord withdrew the divine power around them at this time, their physical bodies would probably collapse in an instant, and only their souls would be able to survive. In such a situation, the venerable overlord continued to speed up into the sky, fully displaying his venerable overlord's divine power. Long Chen and the immeasurable emperor both subconsciously took out their divine artifacts and released their divine brilliance. The venerable overlord sped up into the sky at such a terrifying speed for 4 hours before he finally stopped. At this time, the sky should have been dark, but now it was as bright as the sun. It was empty in all directions, and there wasn't even a single cloud in sight. The ground below had long disappeared without a trace. Even with the Emperor's divine power, the two of them could only vaguely see afterimages. Hidden lightning, divine wind. The venerable overlord used his divine power to protect Long Chen and the immeasurable emperor while his right hand grabbed the air. Lines of inscriptions rushed out from between his fingers, and the inscriptions turned into divine power threads that fell into the void in front of them. Rumble. The deafening sound of thunder was incessant, and when the inscriptions fell on the empty void, a small lightning arc appeared out of thin air. The lightning arc jumped continuously and spread in all directions at a speed visible to the naked eye. A lightning arc the length of a thumb turned 1,000 feet into a sea of lightning in the blink of an eye. Long Chen and the immeasurable monarch subconsciously looked over and saw that in the center of Lei Huan, there was a cloud that did not disperse. A young man was lying on top of the cloud. The young man's face was extremely delicate, and his skin was even fairer. His pair of long eyebrows were tightly knitted, and the corners of his mouth twitched painfully from time to time. The most eye-catching thing was that there were 10 gray pythons as thick as arms shuttling back and forth around his body. If one were to look at them, they would discover that although the pythons were lifelike and their scales could be seen, they were illusory and did not have a physical body. Every python that shuttled around the young man's body, and every bite that fell on him caused the young man's expression to become more painful. "Elder Jean, you're back." The young man's voice was almost inaudible. Just as he opened his mouth, a python rushed out from his mouth and fell between his chest and abdomen again. Although the young man was weak, his voice was as clear and melodious as a bird's chirp, and it made people feel enlightened. I'm back." The venerable overlord's expression changed. He made a gesture with his right hand and jumped into the sea of lightning with Long Chen and the immeasurable emperor. In the blink of an eye, they were beside the young man. Buzz. Long Chen and the immeasurable emperor's faces suddenly turned pale. They only felt a vast opportunity wrap around them, as if this person could take their lives with just a thought. Chapter 9:22. The young man was still lying on the clouds as lightning rumbled around him. As his words left his mouth, the immeasurable monarch's heart trembled. If Long Chen was unable to save this person, he would most likely lose his life. Elder Jean hurriedly said, "Young master, there's no need for that. This person can save you." Pain flashed across the young man's eyes as he looked at Long Chen. After a moment of silence, he said, "A late-stage Emperor Realm cultivator? How can he save me? The ghost python art is something he must." Before he could finish his sentence, he saw that Long Chen's right hand had appeared in front of him at some point in time. He was holding onto a gray python. Crackle! The gray python was crushed by Long Chen. The other 9 pythons seemed to have sensed the threat and immediately hid in the young man's body. The young man was stunned. Before he could say anything, Long Chen said, "Let's talk about the deal." The young man stared at Long Chen. The ghost python art was a sole skill of the ghost python clan. The person who used it had a higher cultivation than him. The 10 ghost pythons were constantly devouring his soul. If he wanted to destroy them, he would need a stronger soul or a soul-type artifact to suppress them. He never thought that this Emperor Realm cultivator would be able to crush the ghost pythons with a wave of his hand. "Your soul is definitely stronger than a mid-stage God King, maybe even stronger." With one ghost python gone, the young man seemed to be in less pain. "Who are you?" The Emperor Realm cultivator's remnant soul had already explained the young man's current situation. When Long Chen heard the young man's question, he replied indifferently, "You have less than 20 hours to live. At this rate, your 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls will be completely devoured. Instead of arguing about who I am, why don't we talk about why I should save you?" The young God King pondered for a moment before he suddenly laughed. "Tell me, what do you want?" This young man was indeed a God King. In the North Foot territory, the Ethereal King and God King Bone Kill were fighting each other. His trip to the Void Soul Tribulation Mountain this time was a risky move, so if he was able to obtain the assistance of this person, then it would be no different than gaining an additional trump card. Long Chen said, "I want you to swear on the inextinguishable Tao law that you will do 3 things for me and never become my enemy." "Anything?" The young God King frowned and asked in a deep voice. "Anything." Long Chen had no intention of backing down. The young God King was silent for a moment. He looked at the ghost pythons around him and nodded with a bitter smile. "I promise you." As soon as he finished speaking, Long Chen did not hesitate at all. At the tip of his finger, a wisp of the Sovereign Lord's remnant soul flew out of his body and smashed all the ghost pythons into smithereens. This scene caused the 3 of them to be incomparably shocked. "Looks like I've underestimated you." As the ghost pythons disappeared one after another, the young God King was instantly enveloped by dazzling formation runes. He stared at Long Chen and said, "You've eliminated all the ghost pythons in 3 breaths. The power of your soul has surpassed that of a god king." Long Chen did not answer, so the young god king continued, "Although you've eliminated the ghost pythons for me, I must leave now. Otherwise, if that person comes looking for me again, I'll be dead for sure. I'll return to the North Foot territory in 2 months at most. Think about the 3 things I owe you. What do you think?" Long Chen nodded and agreed. This young god king was not trying to burn the bridge after crossing the river. After all, he had sworn an oath using the inextinguishable Tao law. Moreover, the ghost pythons were a soul skill. Since they could suppress this young god king, their cultivation should be above his. In that case, this young god king's enemy was at least a mid-stage god king. Farewell. The young god king looked deeply at Long Chen before turning around and leaving. With a single step, the sea of lightning in the sky disappeared without a trace. As a sovereign, Elder Jean also lowered his status and bowed to Long Chen. He was extremely grateful to Long Chen for saving the young god king. Just as the 2 of them were about to leave, the immeasurable emperor actually followed behind them without saying a word. "Holy monk, why are you leaving in such a hurry? The Void Soul Mountain has been invaded and the skeletal creatures are running rampant. Don't you want to follow me to punish evil and promote good?" Long Chen called out to the immeasurable emperor. This time, the battle between the Boneskill God King and the Ethereal King, as well as the evil bone arts that had afflicted many emperors, this young god king definitely knew a lot as a member of the immortal Buddha clan. Before the immeasurable emperor could say anything, the young god king's finger moved slightly. A strand of divine light directly swept the immeasurable emperor to Long Chen. The young god king did not even turn his head as he said indifferently, "This person is naturally rebellious. I left 3 seals on him using your aura. With just a thought, he will be like a pig or a dog. Remember, my name is Zhuge Xiun." The young god king's voice gradually disappeared into the horizon. The immeasurable monarch stood in front of Long Chen. He immediately sensed that there were 3 additional seals between his eyebrows. His entire face fell. This young god king was just too terrifying. He did not even know when the seals that could take his life had appeared on his forehead. There was a difference of 2 whole realms between a sovereign and a god king. A person like this young god king could probably kill thousands of sovereigns with a wave of his hand. Long Chen patted the immeasurable emperor's shoulder and said playfully, "You and I are people who have experienced life and death together. Why would you rather go with them than with a friend like me?" Bang! As soon as he finished speaking, a divine light suddenly appeared in Long Chen's hand and directly blasted the immeasurable emperor from the sky to the ground. Rumble! The earth trembled and the earth trembled. The mud and stones of the mountains tilted to the sides like a tide. The immeasurable emperor was blasted thousands of meters into the ground. Before he could react, he found himself in Long Chen's hand again. Long Chen said coldly, "If not for my soul being different from ordinary people, I'm afraid I would have been possessed by that skeletal creature. Don't you think so?" The immeasurable emperor laughed dryly and hurriedly said, "This poor monk was not willing to do this. I had no choice but to do this. Otherwise, I would have died." Bang! "Didn't you want to F***ck me up?" Rumble! Bang! "Are you still going to dig up my ancestral grave?" Rumble! An entire mountain of 1,000,000 miles shook and rumbled continuously. Origin beasts fled. Many people who were heading to the Void Soul Mountain took a detour. 9 days passed in the blink of an eye. A scholarly young master sat on a palanquin and stepped into the Void Soul Mountain Tribulation Mountain. Anyone who saw this palanquin could not help but look askance. The palanquin was actually carried by human hand. Long Chen sat in the palanquin and said to the person below him, "All right, we've arrived at the Void Soul Mountain Tribulation Mountain. You can put away this palanquin." The servant below him was the immeasurable emperor. Chapter 923. Long Chen looked at the immeasurable emperor's deflated expression and felt much better. Long Chen said to the immeasurable emperor, "Since you are so well informed, help me find a few people." After the two put away the palanquin, they quickly went deeper into the void soul mountain tribulation. Long Chen's divine sense imprint fell into the immeasurable emperor's hand. After the immeasurable emperor took the imprint, he had a thought and asked Long Chen, "Benefactor, since the void soul mountain tribulation is over, can you help me remove this imprint?" Although this imprint was left by Zhuge, it was guided by Long Chen's aura. If Long Chen wanted to remove it, it would be easy. Long Chen teased, "Holy monk, you should just do your own thing. Isn't it better to leave everything to fate?" The immeasurable emperor could only helplessly look up to the sky and roar. The two continued to go deeper into the void soul mountain tribulation. From afar, they could see the divine lightning in the center of the mountain. The void soul mountain tribulation was vast. The two had been traveling for 3 days, but they were still at the periphery of the mountain. "Outer mountain, third battlefield!" The immeasurable emperor suddenly shouted. A palm-sized bird beast made of animal skin circled above his head for a moment before disappearing. The void soul mountain tribulation was divided into 3 areas: Outer Mountain, Inner Mountain, and Tribulation Mountain. The Outer Mountain occupied almost 60% of the void soul mountain tribulation, and the Inner Mountain occupied 20% to 30%. As for the Tribulation Mountain area, it was covered by lightning and tribulation. It was also where the ethereal king's void soul palace was located. Long Chen looked at the immeasurable emperor's actions and coldly snorted, "There isn't a single person I'm looking for in the first 3 battlefields?" The immeasurable emperor laughed and replied, "Yesterday, this bird just came out of the 2nd battlefield. There isn't a person you're looking for. Maybe the person you're looking for is in the 3rd battlefield. We just have to wait." The two of them waited until the sun had set, and the sky patrolling bird finally flew back. Squeak, squeak. The bird beast let out 2 long cries. As it flapped its golden wings, there were actually runes flowing with divine light. Divine runes crisscrossed. Shockingly, it was the scene of a consummate sovereign emperor fighting against the army of skeletons. The scene changed again, and 3 more people appeared. 4 people, there are 4 people you are looking for in the 3rd battlefield. The immeasurable emperor called out to Long Chen. Long Chen's eyes also flashed with a divine light. There were 3 imperial emperors in the 3rd battlefield who possessed the remains of imperial lords. This was undoubtedly the best news for him. The entire Void Soul Mountain had a total of 32 sovereign lords' corpses. 20 of them were in the hands of venerable sovereigns, and only 12 were in the hands of sovereign emperors. If he wanted to obtain all of them, Long Chen would have to bypass the Emperor Realm Masters and take the lead in obtaining all of the Emperor Realm Masters' remains. How many venerable sovereigns are there, including those in the army of skeletons who are stronger than sovereign emperors? Long Chen asked the immeasurable emperor. The immeasurable emperor put the beast skin close to his forehead. After a while, he couldn't help but gasp. There are 40 venerable sovereigns in the 3rd battlefield. These venerable sovereigns are probably accompanied by their sovereign emperors. There are at least 100,000 sovereign emperors, and all of them are the venerable sovereign's subordinates. The skeletons aren't included. The bird beast can't distinguish their cultivation. Long Chen couldn't help but frown. The entire Void Soul Mountain seemed calm, but in fact, the flames of war were raging in the 9 spatial battlefield. The immeasurable emperor glanced at Long Chen and said, "Since Zhuge said that he will be back in 2 months, why don't you wait for him? If the Zhuge Jinshan clan is really willing to help, these people you mentioned can be easily eliminated." Long Chen shook his head and rejected the immeasurable monarch's suggestion. Zhuge Ziyun would only be able to return to the North Foot territory after 2 months. Even if he came back, Long Chen wouldn't let him know that he was searching for the sovereign emperor's body parts. The news that the sovereign emperors and venerable sovereigns had the sovereign emperor's body parts was only known to the imperial palace. Long Chen secretly searching for them was the safest way. If others knew that he could refine the sovereign emperor's body parts, it would probably cause a commotion in the entire ancient sacred divine world. At that time, it would be difficult for him to move forward. This matter would be discovered one day, but the later that day came, the better. Long Chen said to the immeasurable emperor, "You should know what I'm looking for, but you better watch your mouth." The immeasurable emperor quickly replied, "I don't know, this monk doesn't know anything." The immeasurable emperor had the sovereign emperor's body part before, but it was taken away by Long Chen. Then, Long Chen's cultivation increased at an incomprehensible speed. Now, he was taking the risk to come to the Hollow Soul Mountain to kill the sovereign emperor. His goal was obvious. "Follow me into the third spatial battlefield." Long Chen charged straight towards the entrance of the third spatial battlefield. The immeasurable emperor's face turned green. With his middle sovereign emperor cultivation, entering the spatial battlefield would result in his soul being destroyed if he wasn't careful. The spatial battlefield could only be opened by divine kings and above. It was a world of its own, and only divine kings could move it. The entrance to the battlefield was a 100-meter-wide crack in the void. The divine power around the crack did not dissipate. The immeasurable emperor looked at the crack in the void and tried one last time to say to Long Chen, "It'll be hard to come out after going in." Bang. Before he could finish, he was smashed into the crack by Long Chen. The sovereign emperor's remnant soul said, "Don't worry, I'll leave a divine sense imprint at the entrance. When the time comes, we'll be able to find this place and leave the battlefield." The two of them disappeared into the crack in the void. When they reappeared, they were already in a barren land. There was no sun or moon in the sky, and endless yellow sand covered the ground. Rumble. As soon as the two of them entered the battlefield, they felt the sky shake and the earth shake. A deafening explosion filled every corner of the space. They looked in the direction of the sound. They saw a dazzling light covering the sky to their left. Countless rays of divine light were floating in the sky. The three people you're looking for are there." The immeasurable emperor pointed at the area filled with divine light, his voice trembling. The spatial battlefield was so far away, but there was still such a phenomenon. It was most likely the place where sovereigns were fighting. 40 sovereigns and more than 100,000 sovereigns. The immeasurable emperor felt like his feet were filled with lead when he thought of these two groups of numbers. What was the difference between going there and committing suicide? Long Chen's speed became faster and faster, while the immeasurable emperor's speed became slower and slower. Long Chen coldly shouted, "Follow me!" The two of them flew away. As the explosion in their ears became louder and louder, and when the divine light passed by them and fell into the yellow sand, they could already see the chaotic scene in the distance. It was an endless army of skeletons and human cultivators fighting. Long Chen and the immeasurable emperor were only tens of thousands of miles away from the battlefield. Only then could they clearly feel the pressure of the sovereigns. In the sky there were 50 people who were like scorching furnaces. Every move they made caused a vast amount of divine light to shoot into the sky. Chapter 924. The sky patrolling bird appeared in the immeasurable emperor's hand. Long Chen grabbed it and said in a deep voice, "Follow me." The immeasurable emperor had no choice but to follow Long Chen even though he was extremely unwilling. Long Chen had a reason for letting the immeasurable emperor follow him. Since he was a descendant of the immortal Buddha clan, he naturally had many tricks up his sleeve against the skeletons. Moreover, he had many treasures on him, so he would not die easily. The two of them flew toward the battlefield. The space around them began to become chaotic as many emperors were fighting on the ground. There were dozens of emperors in the sky. Long Chen brought the immeasurable monarch and charged into the battle between the monarch. "You want to split the North Foot realm?" Dream on. A group of evil creatures dare to invade the Void Soul Mountain? We must not let them leave the space battlefield. Suppress all these skeletons in the space battlefield. Leave none alive. Roars were heard all around. The surrounding human cultivators did not pay attention to Long Chen and the immeasurable Emperor. They only had eyes for the skeletons in this battle. However, the skeletons were not the same. As soon as the two of them charged into the battlefield, several skeletons suddenly rushed out from under the yellow sand. Bone blades stabbed toward Long Chen and the immeasurable Emperor. The immeasurable Emperor's expression changed drastically. The Tao ring in his hand released rays of light that wrapped around him. Long Chen grabbed the air with his right hand and grabbed the Nine Heavens suppression halberd. Rumble. With one strike, Long Chen pulled the immeasurable Emperor and retreated. The green light in the eyes of the three skeletons was also shocked. They did not expect an emperor who had just entered to be so powerful. We can't go on like this. Once you attack the humans, I'm afraid you won't just be facing the skeletons. The immeasurable emperor said anxiously. Long Chen frowned. However, with the emperor's body in front of him, he would not give up. As long as the emperors in the sky did not attack, Long Chen could take advantage of the chaos to destroy the three skeletons and snatch the emperor's body. He might be able to retreat safely. Seeing Long Chen's persistence, the immeasurable emperor could not help but sigh. Golden light flickered in his mouth, and two golden sariras were spat out. Use your soul to activate the sariras. As long as the skeletons around you are not much stronger, they won't attack you, the immeasurable emperor's soul said. He activated his soul activated the golden sariras and placed them 3 feet above his head. The sariras' bodies reappeared. As the immeasurable emperor, they retreated to Chen's to retreat. Long Chen glared fiercely at the immeasurable sovereign lord and said with a cold snort, "It hasn't been long since we parted, and you have quite a few good things in your hands." The immeasurable monarch hurriedly changed the topic and said, "Let's hurry up and do it." Long Chen activated the sariras. Sure enough, no skeletons appeared to stop him. Many human emperors just glanced at him and ignored him. With the guidance of the sky patrolling bird, Long Chen quickly found one of the skeletons with the emperor's body. Their enemies in the space battlefield were only the skeletons. They did not seem to care about Long Chen's approach. This person was burly and had a fierce look on his face. His cultivation had reached the great perfection of the Emperor realm. Just kill him. This Void Spirit Mountain is full of danger. Only those who have reached the Emperor realm can protect themselves. Seeing that he had found this person, the Emperor's soul urged Long Chen to attack. With Long Chen's current cultivation, as long as he did not encounter an Emperor realm expert, ordinary great perfection emperors would not be a match for him. I'll only take his storage ring, not his life. If he was caught off guard, Long Chen was confident that he could shatter part of his body with the Nine Heavens, central suppression halberd and snatch the storage ring in his hand. He had no enmity with this person and had never seen him before. It was enough to take the Emperor's body. Your Excellency, you're good. How about you share my burden? As Long Chen approached, the man immediately looked at him. The sariras on his head could disperse the skeletons, which was very eye-catching. Before Long Chen could make a move, the burly man flew over with a ferocious look on his face. Behind him were 3 skeletal creatures. Each of the skeletons had the combat strength of a late-stage Emperor realm expert. Their bone blades were cold. Long Chen frowned and did not move from his spot. The man directly flew behind him and snorted coldly, "I wonder which Emperor realm expert you are. Since you're here, why don't you fight with me?" As he spoke, he reached out to grab the golden sariras on Long Chen's head. "You're courting death. Don't blame me." Long Chen sneered. The halberd in his hand was like a rainbow, with Taoist rhymes soaring to the sky. The burly man's expression changed drastically. He felt a majestic divine power rushing toward him. Especially the halberd in Long Chen's hand, there was an unparalleled suppressive force. At such a close distance, his whole body was penetrated by the halberd in the blink of an eye. Bang! The burly man's body was instantly shattered. Long Chen took away his storage ring and disappeared in the chaotic battle. If he was further away from Long Chen, he might be able to hold on for a while longer. However, at such a distance, it was too easy for Long Chen to kill him. The burly man's body was shattered. His divine soul was exposed in front of the three skeletons and was torn to pieces in an instant. He killed a peak Emperor realm expert with a single blow. Many emperors in the surroundings saw this, whether intentionally or unintentionally. They all stared at Long Chen in shock. Then, they frowned and kept sending out messages. Long Chen put away the storage ring with the golden light in his hand and rushed toward the other two. An hour later, Long Chen had 2 more storage rings in his hand. This time, he had already held back. He did not kill the 2 emperors who had the remains of the Emperor Realm expert. He only shattered more than half of their bodies. With their cultivation, they could recover to their original state in a few breaths. He quickly found the immeasurable emperor and was about to leave the 3rd battlefield with him. The immeasurable emperor could not help but be shocked when he saw Long Chen take 3 storage rings in just 2 hours. He urged Long Chen to leave the 3rd battlefield. The 2 of them rushed back to where they had come from. However, before they had even walked for a moment, several dozen beams of divine light suddenly fell from the sky, sealing off their path. More than 10 peak Emperor realm experts surrounded them from all directions in the blink of an eye. Are the 2 of you Emperor He's subordinates? Why do you dare to attack your own clansmen? The peak Emperor realm experts had gloomy expressions. 2 middle-aged men rushed over from afar and said loudly, "Don't attack for now. This person doesn't have any killing intent. Ask him first. This person's combat strength is extraordinary. He far surpasses his peers. The 2 of us didn't even have time to react before half of our bodies were shattered. Take the storage rings. We have great use for him." When Long Chen heard this, he frowned and pulled the immeasurable emperor up. He did not have the slightest intention of explaining as he broke through the air and left. The halberd in his hand shook, and a vast pressure spread out in all directions. Bang! 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 3 emperors stood in front of Long Chen and took the initiative to stop him. However, more than half of their bodies were shattered in just 10 moves. Chapter 925. The 3 imperial emperors who tried to stop Long Chen were shocked. They were the top imperial emperors among the 10,000 imperial emperors, but the 3 of them could not last more than 10 moves against Long Chen. Was he really just an imperial emperor? Sir, please wait. The leader of the imperial emperors still tried to stop Long Chen. However, Long Chen had no intention of stopping at all. Instead, another monarch waved his hand and sent out a few more communication formations. Dozens of imperial emperors quickly left the battlefield and flew over. You want to leave after killing our imperial emperor? You are not giving Imperial Emperor Lai Xing any face. The Imperial Emperor shouted. This person was obviously from the same clan as the first Imperial monarch that Long Chen had killed. Stop him. I want to see exactly how many people he can stop. Since he's entered the spatial battlefield, it's absolutely impossible for him to leave. It was easy to enter the space battlefield, but it was not easy to leave. Of course, this was only for them. When Long Chen entered, the Imperial Emperor's remnant soul had left his divine sense on the void crack. His divine sense was far stronger than that of a divine king, and it was enough for Long Chen to step into the void crack and leave. The immeasurable emperor was sweating profusely. He followed behind Long Chen and did not dare to leave. He rushed straight into the void crack. It seemed empty, but Long Chen knew that as long as the Imperial Emperor's remnant soul used his divine sense, he could open the space battlefield from the inside out. Something is wrong. Retreat quickly. An army has entered the third battlefield. Long Chen saw that he was about to reach the void crack, but he suddenly heard the Imperial Emperor's remnant soul's voice in his mind. Long Chen's footsteps suddenly stopped and he could not help but retreat. His expression was extremely ugly. If he could not leave the third battlefield immediately, it would be very troublesome if the Imperial Emperors behind him surrounded him. When the immeasurable Emperor saw Long Chen retreat, he immediately shouted, "Hurry up and leave. What are you hesitating for? If you stay any longer, you will definitely die." The 10+ imperial monarchs that followed closely behind them had astounded expressions as well. They clearly hadn't expected that Long Chen would actually retreat. The Imperial Emperor under Emperor Lai Xing sneered. This person is probably not the Imperial Emperor who was crowned under Void Soul's mountain. He doesn't know that only godly kings can open this space battlefield from the inside. After saying that, the dozens of Imperial Emperors in the distance had already charged towards him, wanting to stop Long Chen. Rumble! Long Chen stopped in his tracks, and a vast pressure swept out from behind him like a tsunami. The dozens of monarchs in front of him couldn't help but freeze in place. At the entrance of the space battlefield, white skeleton creatures poured in like a tide. Among them were more than a dozen Emperor Realm existences. How could this be? Could it be that the other battlefields have already ended their battles? That's the skeletal creature from the fourth battlefield. I've seen that skeletal creature with Dao runes all over its body. It's over this time. The scene instantly became chaotic. The humans in the third battlefield all revealed looks of panic. The dozens of Imperial Emperors that had originally blocked Long Chen no longer had the mind to care about Long Chen. They quickly retreated, wanting to leave the entrance of the space battlefield. Slaughter all these humans for me. The skeletal creature with Dao runes all over its body laughed sinisterly. With that order, tens of thousands of skeletal creatures comparable to peak Imperial Emperors charged towards the human Imperial Emperors on the ground. An Emperor-level skeletal creature stood guard at the entrance to the space battlefield. This way, even if a godly king opened the door from the outside, they wouldn't be able to leave at will. Long Chen and the immeasurable Emperor had no choice but to follow the dozens of Imperial Emperors back into the chaotic battlefield under the onslaught of the skeletal army. With the addition of tens of thousands of skeletal creatures and the ascension of more than a dozen Emperors, the human Emperor Realm experts' advantage in numbers instantly disappeared. Many of the Imperial Emperors died unnatural death. What should we do now? The human Emperor Realm experts' advantage in numbers has disappeared. If this continues, these Emperor Realm skeletal creatures will be enough to turn the tide of the battle once the Imperial Emperors are defeated, the immeasurable Emperor anxiously explained to Long Chen. Long Chen destroyed several skeletal creatures in succession, his expression extremely ugly. Even though he had the Emperor Realm Emperor's remains in his hands, he couldn't smelt them at all. Once the human Emperor Realm experts were defeated and the skeletal creatures attacked, he wouldn't be able to protect himself. Long Chen had to leave the third battlefield as soon as possible. "Your Excellency, please wait." Long Chen was just about to lead the immeasurable Emperor away from the Emperor Realm experts when he heard a shout from the battlefield. Long Chen looked over when he heard the voice. The person who spoke was one of the people whose storage rings he had snatched from him after he had shattered half of his body. Long Chen saw that this person had no ill intentions, so he stopped in his tracks with his halberd in hand. There were 7 or 8 Imperial Emperors behind this person, and the other person whose storage ring Long Chen had stolen was also among them. "Your Excellency, you don't have to worry. Although the two of us want the storage rings, we want to leave this place alive even more." The middle-aged man in the lead looked deeply at Long Chen and said in a deep voice. The thin middle-aged man next to him, who was wearing a flowery robe, also snorted coldly. "The things in the storage rings are useless to the two of us. If you want them, just take them. But you have to do one thing for us. The two of them had a good relationship. They both knew that the Emperor Realm Emperor's remains were in each other's storage rings. When they were both robbed at the same time, they immediately understood Long Chen's purpose. They knew that with the strength Long Chen had just displayed, killing the two of them would be a piece of cake. Just robbing their storage rings was already the most benevolent thing they could do. Moreover, at this moment, Long Chen might be their last chance to survive. What do you want me to do? Long Chen asked in a deep voice. The two middle-aged men looked at each other and said to the people behind them, "You two stop the skeletal creatures around us. The two of us will talk to him alone." Seeing that the Imperial Emperors had retreated, the two of them said to Long Chen, "The third battlefield is built on the Wind Thunder Cave under the Void Soul Palace. This place was deliberately built by the Ethereal King when he opened up the space battlefield. For some reason, the Bone Kill King found out about this. These Emperor Realm skeletal creatures have blocked almost all the Emperor Realm Masters, preventing them from opening the Wind Thunder Cave." Upon hearing this, Long Chen sneered. "You mean you want me to open the so-called Wind Thunder Cave in front of so many Emperor Realm Masters?" At this time, there were nearly 100 Emperor Realm Masters and skeletal creatures in the sky. Opening the so-called Wind Thunder Cave was no different from suicide. Although these Emperor Realm Masters did not attack the Imperial Emperors on the ground, once they rushed into the sky, any Emperor Realm Master's attack would be enough to kill them. Chapter 926. The Wind Thunder Cave. There were a total of 9 Void Soul Mountain Calamity Mountains, all of which were ancient formations tempered by the lightning tribulation at the peak of the mountain. They were personally set up by the Ethereal King. In fact, it was not just the third battlefield. The other 8 space battlefields were also connected to the Wind Thunder Cave. The 9 space battlefields were all set up by the Ethereal King. No matter where one came from, as long as they wanted to rush to the inner mountain, they had to break through the 9 space battlefields. In the third battlefield, the situation had become one-sided with the arrival of the skeletal creatures from the fourth battlefield. If this continued, the stalemate between the two sides would be completely broken in a few days. The two emperors looked anxiously at Long Chen. Long Chen was only an emperor, but his battle strength far exceeded that of his peers. If he quietly approached the Wind Thunder Cave from below, the emperors would definitely not notice. Ever since the human race and the skeletal creatures entered the space battlefields, the skeletal creatures and emperors blocked the Wind Thunder Cave behind them. The human emperors did not even have a chance to get close, let alone open the Wind Thunder Cave. "Sir, have you thought about it? We have tried many times over the past few days." The middle-aged man asked Long Chen again. "Every time, we would be repelled by the emperor-level skeletal creatures guarding the Wind Thunder Cave. You may be our last chance." Long Chen took a deep breath and finally nodded in agreement. Just as the middle-aged man said, only by repelling the skeletal creatures would he have a chance to leave. Moreover, if he rejected them now, these human imperial emperors probably wouldn't let him off so easily. This was especially true for the imperial emperor he had killed. "Pass down the order. Prepare to break through the Wind Thunder Cave again. Ask those below the emperor level to come and discuss a plan." The middle-aged man was overjoyed and quickly passed down the order to the emperors behind him. More than a dozen emperors disappeared from the battlefield in the blink of an eye. As soon as these emperors left, the skeletal creatures that were piled up in all directions roared and charged. Each of them had the battle strength of a late-stage emperor, and the bone blades in their hands had unfathomable power. Even late-stage emperors were afraid of these bone blade. The middle-aged emperor and the other person beside him immediately went berserk. Long Chen also began to resist with his halberd. On the other hand, the immeasurable emperor shamelessly hung onto Long Chen's back. When the two emperors saw this scene, they immediately raised their eyebrows and looked at Long Chen playfully. Boom! Long Chen's halberd continued to kill the skeletal creatures, but he didn't notice their gazes. Instead, it was the immeasurable emperor who said in a deep voice, "Benefactors, if you continue to look at me like this, I will feel embarrassed." The halberd in Long Chen's hand trembled, and his face couldn't help but twitch. However, in the end, he only snorted coldly and didn't throw the immeasurable emperor away. The immortal emperors here were at least late-stage immortal emperors. With the immeasurable emperor's cultivation, he might die if he was careless. The immeasurable emperor might seem shameless, but he was definitely good at escaping. This fellow's understanding of the skeletal creatures would definitely come in handy. In just 2 hours, many skeletal creatures had died in front of Long Chen. Each of them had the combat strength of a late-stage immortal emperor. Whether it was the 2 middle-aged imperial emperors or the other skeletal creatures in the surroundings, they were all stunned by this scene. In fact, none of the skeletal creatures wanted to approach Long Chen for a short period of time. Long Chen saw that he could finally heave a sigh of relief. He directly threw the immeasurable emperor off his shoulder. He quickly walked in front of the 2 emperors and asked, "Where is the exact location of the Wind Thunder Cave, and how do I open it? What will happen after I open it?" The immeasurable emperor didn't seem to care what Long Chen did. He still followed closely behind Long Chen. The skinny middle-aged monarch said to Long Chen, "The Wind Thunder Cave is below the place where the monarchs are fighting. It is also the place where the strongest monarchs of the bone creatures gather." As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and pointed at the place where the emperors were fighting. Following the direction of his finger, Long Chen's gaze finally locked onto the place where the skeletal creatures gathered. "You just need to reach the Wind Thunder Cave and try to use your soul to trigger the heavenly lightning. When the time comes, the dense heavenly lightning on the lightning tribulation mountain will be mighty and mighty." Long Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. Seeing that this was the end of the person's words, he didn't ask any more questions. A short while later, over 30 imperial monarchs arrived from the surroundings. These emperors were all at the great circle of the emperor realm. There were even at least 3 crowned seas of reincarnation above their head. "Clear this place out. Who do you plan to send to their deaths this time? Those skeletal creatures know the location of the Wind Thunder Cave like the back of their hand. It's impossible for anyone to get close." The person who spoke had a fierce look on his face. He seemed to be very unhappy. Not far from him, another emperor said, "Previously, when our emperors had the advantage, we couldn't succeed. Now that the skeletal creatures of the 4th battlefield have joined the fray, our chances of success are very slim. Why waste our battle strength?" Half of the people around also shook their heads while the other half remained silent. The thin middle-aged emperor in front of Long Chen frowned slightly and quickly said, "Do you have a better idea this time? How long can we hold on like this?" Among the silent crowd, someone couldn't help but speak up, "Indeed. Now that the 4th battlefield has fallen, I'm afraid we won't be able to hold on for more than 10 days. The only way to reverse the situation is the Wind Thunder Cave." "Who did you choose this time? How fast is your movement technique? Is your combat strength up to the task? I'm afraid this will be the last test." This group of people were the subordinates of the various emperors here. In contrast, the 2 emperors in front of Long Chen had the least number of crowned seas of reincarnation, and their strength wasn't outstanding either. Seeing this, Long Chen slowly stepped forward from the crowd. He quickly said, "I just need you to try your best to draw the skeletal creatures away from the central area. There's no need to force your way in." As soon as his voice fell, the fierce-looking emperor sneered, "You're an emperor, he's disciple, yet you dare speak such arrogant words. If we don't charge in, you'll only be able to get a kilometer away from the Wind Thunder Cave." The 2 middle-aged monarchs in front of Long Chen frowned. They turned their heads and said to Long Chen, "Although your battle prowess is strong, it's impossible for you to charge through by yourself. Long Chen shook his head and said, "Do as I say, or I won't go on this trip." The two middle-aged imperial monarchs intended to say something, but they were interrupted by the fierce-looking imperial monarch. He said coldly, "Why should we care if he's willing to give up his life? Let him try for the last time so that all of you can give up." Chapter 9:27. In the third battlefield, the emperors near the Wind Thunder Cave began to move away from the battlefield as the emperors below the Emperor Realm gave their orders. 2 hours later, Long Chen disappeared from the battlefield under the watchful eyes of dozens of emperors. The immeasurable emperor followed him. After the two of them left, many emperors could not help but ask, "Is this person really stronger than us as you said, and is very likely to be from the Tianyuan divine clan?" Indeed, this person can kill a perfect stage Emperor Realm Emperor in 10 moves. I have never seen such a terrifying battle prowess from a Northern Foot Realm Emperor, the middle-aged emperor whose storage ring had been snatched by Long Chen said in a deep voice. "Regardless of whether we succeed or not, this is our last attempt. Let's do as he says." Another person shook his head and sighed. Soon after, dozens of emperors joined the battle again to fight the skeletal creatures. On the other side, behind Long Chen, the immeasurable emperor's face fell. He watched as Long Chen got closer and closer to the group of emperors and said in a trembling voice, "Benefactor, can't you tell that they are still hiding something? You are simply courting death if you go over like this." Long Chen sneered and replied in a deep voice, "They are indeed hiding something about the Wind Thunder Cave, but do you have a better way to leave this place now?" As Long Chen spoke, he glanced at the void crack in the distance. An Emperor Realm skeletal creature was still standing there. "Instead of worrying about whether or not I will die, why don't you take out something else?" Long Chen killed a skeletal creature blocking his way with his halberd and said in a deep voice, "If you help me force these skeletal creatures back, won't I have a better chance of approaching the Wind Thunder Cave?" The immeasurable emperor could not help but glare fiercely at Long Chen. He did not expect that Long Chen would still be plotting against him at this time. He snorted coldly and said, "Since you're afraid of death, why don't you let them lead the way? With so many monarchs leading the way, wouldn't the chances of success be higher?" That was then, and this is now. Now, the skeletal creature Venerable Emperor has the initiative. If we attack the Wind Thunder Cave on a large scale, even if we reach the Wind Thunder Cave, I'm afraid I'll be killed by the Venerable Emperor before I can even step within 10,000 meters of the cave, Long Chen replied. The immeasurable Emperor was suddenly enlightened. Before he could say anything, Long Chen continued, "I need to appear as if I'm about to die when I'm 10,000 meters away. In that case, I'll have to rely on magical artifacts to protect my life and make the skeletal creatures on the backs of the venerable sovereigns relax. I also need to increase my speed abruptly when they notice that something is wrong, far surpassing my own movement technique. This way, they will have time to free up their men. It would be best if I have a speed-type Dharma treasure to support me. In the last 2 kilometers to 3 kilometers, I need a way to suppress or disperse a large number of white bones creatures, don't you think so?" Long Chen said one sentence after another. The immeasurable Emperor was completely stunned on Long Chen's back. As soon as Long Chen finished speaking, the immeasurable Emperor stood up and wanted to snatch away from his back. Unfortunately, the Dharma seal between his eyebrows flashed and dispersed his divine power. Then, Long Chen's divine power pressed down on his back. "Why? Are you willing to give up your life for the sake of magical artifacts?" Long Chen could not help but laugh. "I've carried you all this way. If we die together." The immeasurable Emperor panted heavily. His entire face was red to his neck. After a long while, he said, "You're more shameless than I am. If you want me to help you, you must swear on the inextinguishable Tao that from now on, you won't have any ideas about the magical artifacts in my hands. Otherwise, I'll just die with you today." Long Chen could not help but laugh at the immeasurable emperor's words. Before he could say anything, the emperor's remnant soul said, "Just swear. When you reach the emperor stage and start comprehending the Tao law, you won't be affected by the Tao law of the ancient saint divine world with the chaotic golden code." If the immeasurable emperor heard this, he would probably commit suicide out of anger. In the end, the immeasurable emperor gave Long Chen a tricolor scarecrow, a pair of boots as thin as cicada's wings, and a bone nail. The three magical artifacts were all covered in Tao patterns, and their divine light was restrained. Long Chen put away the three magical artifacts and could not help but sigh. After the 9 Yang God clan, you were pursued by dozens of emperors, and you still managed to obtain so many magical artifacts, the immeasurable emperor said unhappily. These are all items from the 9 Yang God clan. It's just that you don't know about them. If I didn't have these things, would I have been able to survive until I reached the Void Soul Mountain after you released my origin aura? Long Chen did not say anything else. He carried the immeasurable emperor and directly rushed toward the area directly below the emperor stage. They were only tens of thousands of meters away from the Wind Thunder Cave. Many emperors who knew that Long Chen was preparing to attack the Wind Thunder Cave looked at Long Chen from afar. However, when they saw that Long Chen was carrying someone on his back, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. This guy is actually carrying a mid-stage Emperor stage cultivator to attack the Wind Thunder Cave? Is he courting death? He's even carrying a burden at this time. It's over. The last chance to attack the Wind Thunder Cave is gone. Today, one Emperor stage cultivator has already fallen. There's no time for anyone else to attack the Wind Thunder Cave. On the other side, Long Chen rushed toward the Wind Thunder Cave with his halberd in hand. More and more skeletons appeared from all directions. At this moment, the people around him had truly witnessed Long Chen's terrifying combat strength. Under his halberd, even late-stage or perfection-stage Emperor stage skeletons were no match for him. Long Chen was about to rush into the Wind Thunder Cave for nearly 10,000 meters. He had already killed dozens of skeletons along the way. The green light in the eye sockets of the skeletal creatures under the Wind Thunder Cave immediately fell on his body. Within 10,000 meters, there were nearly 1,000 skeletons. The green light in each of their eyes was as bright as fire. Their aura was extraordinary, far surpassing that of ordinary skeletons. When the immeasurable emperor saw Long Chen rush into the 10,000-meter area, he whispered, "You can reveal all the Buddhist runes I've imprinted on you, Buzz." As soon as he finished speaking, countless golden lights shot into the sky from Long Chen's halberd. 300-meter-tall Buddha spirits appeared on it, chanting Buddhist scriptures. Roar! Countless skeletons were not afraid of death. The bone blades in their hands shot out a monstrous cold light as they charged toward Long Chen dauntlessly. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Long Chen's halberd still killed the skeletons as if they were cabbages. With the support of the Buddha spirits, once the halberd touched the skeletons, it would ignite with golden flames and burn them to ashes. Chapter 928. The huge mountain of bone blades descended majestically, surrounded by a vast black aura of death. One could even hear the endless howls of ghosts. Long Chen's expression changed slightly, and his gaze was fixed on the Wind Thunder Cave. Battle technique, ancient sacred dragon god transformation. Buzz. Dragon shadows soared into the sky and intertwined with the halberd in Long Chen's hand. In the blink of an eye, they collided with the mountain of blades. There was a deafening explosion, and a huge wave of air swept out like a tsunami. The huge mountain of bone blades flew back, but Long Chen continued to charge forward. "You're quite capable. Bone-killing black demon formation." The skeletal creature covered in Tao patterns was a little surprised. As soon as he finished speaking, black Tao patterns appeared around the dozens of Emperor-level skeletal creatures behind him. The Tao patterns flowed and flickered. The skeletal creatures roared at the sky, and countless black auras gathered in their mouths to form a black light pillar that was several meters thick. The beam of light shot up to a height of more than 10 meters and dispersed with a loud bang. Like a snake, it interweaved into a huge black light array diagram. As soon as the array diagram appeared, endless black light turned into a river and poured into the mouth of the leading white bone creature. The array diagram on the skeletal creature's body seemed to come alive. Its physical body grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. Its perfected emperor-level aura was filled with pitch-black aura. It was explosive and strange. Among so many people who have attacked the Wind Thunder Cave, you're the first to reach here. The skeletal creature, which was hundreds of meters tall, spoke in human language. But this is as far as you can go, Rumble. His voice was as ear-piercing as iron scraping against glass. As soon as he finished speaking, the Tao patterns around his body flashed, and countless bone blades condensed in the air. As the earth shook, countless giant skeletal tails surrounded by black auras rushed out from under Long Chen's feet. Each giant skeletal tail was formed by countless bone blades. Wherever it passed, whether it was a human or a skeletal creature, they were all crushed to pieces. Even their souls could not escape. All the emperors below the emperor level could not help but gasp when they saw this. They had forcefully attacked the Wind Thunder Cave many times before, but they had all returned without success. They had never seen this skeletal creature display such terrifying combat strength. Everyone couldn't help but look down at the bottom of the Wind Thunder Cave. There were a few other skeletal creatures with Tao patterns engraved on their bodies. Their hearts sank to the bottom. Even the two emperors whose storage rings had been snatched away by Long Chen could not help but shake their heads and smile bitterly. Bang, bang, bang. Long Chen's long halberd was like a rainbow, but his speed did not decrease in the slightest. One after another, giant white bone tails followed closely behind him. Wherever they passed, the ground was riddled with holes. There's still 6,000 meters left. Long Chen's heart skipped a beat. He leaped into the air and flew straight towards the skeletal creature that had shrunk to 1,000 feet in size. Seeing Long Chen rushing over, the skeletal creature retreated instead of advancing. It even let out a mocking laugh. More than 10 giant arms appeared behind him, each of them holding a giant bone blade. As the bone blades swung, black gas filled the sky and flowed out of the void. Wherever it passed, all life was extinguished. This time, Long Chen finally stopped. He held the halberd in his hand and clashed with the skeletal creature. The Buddha spirit on the halberd gradually disappeared under the black gas. The skeletal creature's body was huge, but its attack speed and divine power were several times stronger than before. The ground where the two of them fought cracked for tens of thousands of meters. Whether it was the skeletal creature or the human emperors, they all retreated far away. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had fought for a full hour. Long Chen's body was covered in blood, and the skeletal creature's bones were cracked. The immeasurable emperor sent a voice transmission to Long Chen. You don't have to act so well. Can you really save your life with such injuries? He could not help but glance at the bloody wounds on Long Chen's body. Although the bone blade wounds did not take away Long Chen's life, the strange aura in them made it impossible for Long Chen to heal his body. Fresh blood flowed out, making him look very miserable. Long Chen did not say anything. He just glanced at the sky more than 100,000 meters above where the venerable sovereigns were fighting. If he was not afraid of these venerable sovereigns, Long Chen was even confident that he could charge straight to the Wind Thunder Cave. Go to hell. Long Chen pretended to be in a sorry state, and his face even showed a hint of the will to die. Holding the halberd in his hand, he rushed toward the giant skeletal creature again. When the skeletal creature saw that Long Chen was going to kill it in one blow, it immediately released an endless amount of power. It even pulled out a Tao-patterned spine bone from the center of its back. Rumble! The two attacks collided, but the skeletal creature's face suddenly changed. Under the halberd, his huge white skeletal body was crushed into powder. His dark green eyes stared fixedly at Long Chen before they were completely extinguished. Poochie! Long Chen's halberd was dragged behind him. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and he looked like an arrow at the end of its flight. He actually won. This person is undoubtedly from the Tianyuan divine clan. Such a terrifying skeletal creature actually died at his hands. He is now less than 6,000 meters away from the Wind Thunder Cave. He is indeed the one who has gone the furthest. There are more than 10 skeletal creatures with Tao patterns in front of him. It's impossible for him to charge past them. He's just a dying man after a tragic victory. Many human sovereign emperors could not help but sigh. However, they also knew that Long Chen could no longer attack the Wind Thunder Cave in his current state. Under everyone's gaze, Long Chen dragged his halberd and continued to fall toward the Wind Thunder Cave. His speed was already ridiculously slow compared to before. Among the skeletal creatures gathered below the Wind Thunder Cave, the leader frowned slightly and sneered, "Go, strip his body and soul. This person's bones are not bad. We can keep him." After that, 3 skeletal creatures at the peak of the Sovereign Emperor realm charged out again. Although they were shocked by Long Chen's combat strength, in their eyes, Long Chen was just a dying man. They were not afraid. 3 skeletal creatures landed in front of Long Chen, blocking his path to the Wind Thunder Cave. Then, they took out their bone blades and slashed at Long Chen. Long Chen roared and moved his halberd again. His entire body was blasted into the ground. However, the 3 skeletal sovereign emperors in front of him died a violent death. When the human sovereign emperors saw this scene, they were already shocked by Long Chen's combat strength. However, at this moment, their hearts were filled with a sense of tragedy. They only felt that Long Chen wanted to kill a few more skeletal creatures before he died and get closer to the Wind Thunder Cave. Dozens of breaths passed. Everyone watched as Long Chen crawled out of the gully in the ground again. There was even a bowl-sized bloody hole under his ribs. He still walked toward the Wind Thunder Cave while trembling. Chapter 929. At this moment, Long Chen was less than 4,000 meters away from the Wind Thunder Cave. Another 1,000 meters in front of him would be the place where the skeletons gathered. These skeletons with Tao patterns did not even realize that Long Chen was too close to the Wind Thunder Cave. More than 10 white bone emperors rushed toward Long Chen again. At this moment, Long Chen was struggling to move and was on the verge of death. They did not hesitate to give him the final blow. However, just as their attacks were about to land, an unprecedented divine light suddenly erupted from Long Chen's body. His divine power surged like a tsunami, covering the sky and earth. Azura whirling elephant! Slash! The halberd in Long Chen's hand soared into the sky. Countless Tao patterns flickered under his feet. His thin boots produced an ear-piercing roar. There were actually 2 divine birds circling around them. At the same time, most of the wounds on Long Chen's body healed instantly. Only a 3-colored scarecrow was left on the ground. Bang 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 bang, white mist filled the sky. Among the 10 white bone emperors, 5 of them were instantly crushed by the halberd. In front of the surging divine power, the remaining few only felt that the flames of their lives were about to extinguish. They did not have the slightest intention to chase after him. Whether it was the many humans in the battlefield or the skeletons in the Wind Thunder Cave, they were all stunned at this moment. No one had expected Long Chen to come back to life at this moment. Many human leaders felt the blood in their bodies burning. They shook off the skeletons beside them and stared at Long Chen. Only the fierce-looking Imperial Emperor felt his face burning. From the beginning to the end, he did not believe that Long Chen could get close to the Wind Thunder Cave. Everyone around also heard what he said. Now that Long Chen had reached this place, it was already beyond everyone's imagination. He snorted coldly and said, Even if he hid his strength and deliberately approached the Wind Thunder Cave in this way, avoiding the eyes and ears of the venerable sovereigns, they would not be able to free up time immediately. But how can he win against those skeletal creatures with Tao patterns? The surrounding emperors of the same clan heard his words and frowned slightly. Although that's the case, we haven't done as much as he has. If we can lend him a hand now, this matter might succeed. Unfortunately, it's already too late for us to rush over now. In order to help Long Chen draw away the skeletons around the Wind Thunder Cave as much as possible, they had already distanced themselves from the Wind Thunder Cave. At this moment, it was impossible for them to make a move. They were also very clear in their hearts. If it wasn't for this, perhaps Long Chen wouldn't have been able to come here so easily. On the other side, the skeletal creatures began to panic. "Stop him, he's playing with us." The leading skeleton creature turned into a stream of light and rushed toward Long Chen. Other than the 3 white bone creatures with Tao patterns, there were also 200 white bone imperial emperors under the lightning acupoint. All of them flew out together, wanting to stop Long Chen. Boom! 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 Many white bone creatures emitted a monstrous divine aura, wanting to stop Long Chen. However, their white bone bodies suddenly emitted crisp, cracking sounds. Everyone's footsteps stopped abruptly, and they fell to the ground. Under everyone's gaze, they saw a bone nail stuck in the ground where Long Chen was originally standing. The inscriptions on the nail spread out in all directions like a stream. Every time the ripples flowed, a portion of the brilliance on the nail would disappear. However, all the white bone creatures that approached were suppressed. The brilliance of the bone nail was getting dimmer and dimmer. At this speed, it would probably completely collapse in less than 10 breaths. However, at this moment, Long Chen had already rushed to less than 1,000 meters away from the Wind Thunder Cave. "I'll help you again." Seeing that the Wind Thunder Arena was right in front of him, the immeasurable Emperor's Tao ring suddenly flew up, and a total of 8 Buddha beads flew out from it. Om Ma and I. At this moment, the immeasurable Emperor actually leaped onto Long Chen's shoulder. His palms were clasped together, and his entire body seemed to be made of gold. Under the 8 Buddha beads, he actually uttered 3 of the 6 Sanskrit mantras from his mouth. Bzzzt. Bzzzt. As the Sanskrit mantras fell, the white bone creatures that were preparing to resist under the Wind Thunder Cave in front of Long Chen began to disappear into thin air, and thick smoke billowed. The immeasurable Emperor's mantras seemed to have an unprecedented suppressive force on the white bone creatures. Sacred Buddha Clan. There's a Sacred Buddha Clan in this space battlefield. Oh no, why isn't that brat dead yet? He's rushing to the Wind Thunder Arena. In the sky, the white bone creatures and venerable sovereigns' thunderous voices boomed, and they seemed to be affected by the 3 Sanskrit mantras. However, as their voices fell, Long Chen was already standing where the Wind Thunder Cave was. Buzz. Without any hesitation, Long Chen's divine soul suddenly spread out. The moment his divine soul spread out, the entire third space battlefield's sky was instantly filled with wind and thunder. A sea of lightning condensed without dissipating, and a dense aura of destruction filled the entire space. The Wind Thunder Cave was open. The immeasurable Emperor had already landed behind Long Chen. He stood a few meters below Long Chen's feet and stared at Long Chen in a daze. At this moment, Long Chen's eyes were filled with lightning, and his clothes were all pulverized. The wounds left by the evil power of the bone blades all over his body had lightning pouring out like water. The scene made one's scalp tingle. Boom, boom, boom. The sea of lightning poured down, and countless bolts of lightning several hundred meters thick fell, almost covering the entire third space battlefield. Miserable screams could be heard endlessly. Under the lightning, countless white bone creatures were scorched black like charcoal. Nearly 30% of the white bone emperors were blasted into wisps of white smoke. Kill, kill, kill! The Wind Thunder Cave is open. Even if the evil creatures don't die, their combat strength will be sharply reduced. Kill all these evil creatures. The lightning tribulation is enough to make them lose their combat strength for a short period of time. Loud shouts rang out one after another, and countless skeletal creatures died a violent death. In just a few hundred breaths, nearly half of the white bone emperors had died at the hands of the human emperors. In the sky, even the emperor's white bone creatures were covered in lightning arcs, and their auras began to become chaotic. The originally one-sided situation was completely overturned because of the opening of the Wind Thunder Cave. The immeasurable emperor saw that Long Chen didn't move at all and didn't dare leave him at all. All the white bone creatures that came close to him were directly pulverized by the power of the lightning. In the space battlefield, all the emperors among the white bone creatures were killed on the third day. The remaining 70 to 80,000 emperors joined the battle against the emperors, which was the last straw that broke the camel's back. The emperor's white bone creatures died one after another, and the third space battlefield began to calm down. Chapter 930. The immeasurable emperor's back was almost touching Long Chen's feet. He stared at the 30 or so emperors and could not help but tremble. The leader of the emperors moved his right hand slightly, and the emperor felt an endless tearing force coming from the surrounding space. He was thrown several thousand meters away and landed heavily on the ground. The emperor said in a deep voice, "This person used his soul to activate the Wind Thunder acupoint, but his soul was not destroyed. Even his body was not crushed. It's incredible. The third space battlefield has been taken. It is said that the Wind Thunder tribulation cloud will be produced after the Wind Thunder acupoint is opened. It should be in his soul." As soon as he finished speaking, divine light intertwined in his hand and reached for Long Chen's forehead. "Venerable Hunter Emperor, please wait." A loud voice interrupted him. Hunter Sovereign looked around and saw many sovereigns surrounded by divine light. 2 sovereigns walked out from the back of the crowd. These 2 were the ones whose storage rings Long Chen had stolen. Without them, Long Chen would not have chosen to activate the Wind Thunder acupoint. When the 2 saw Long Chen's current appearance, they could not help but bow and say in a low voice, "Senior Hunter Emperor, although this person is not a subordinate of any of the emperors, he truly saved our lives. Since he is not dead yet, can you spare his life?" As soon as he finished speaking, another emperor spoke up, "Senior Hunter Emperor, you are not going to kill this person for the Wind Thunder tribulation cloud, are you? Even if you kill this person, the Wind Thunder tribulation cloud should not be in your hands, right?" The emperors were in a mess because of the Wind Thunder tribulation cloud. Ka. While everyone was fighting, thunderbolts crazily exploded around Long Chen's body, producing ear-piercing roars. Long Chen suddenly took a step forward and almost collapsed to the ground. All of a sudden, the gazes of all the Emperor Realm Masters fell on him again. Before anyone could say anything, Long Chen slowly stood up from the ground and said in a deep voice, "I triggered the Wind Thunder acupoint and accidentally obtained a thundercloud. This thing almost took my life. I ask the venerable sovereigns to put it away." As soon as he finished speaking, he pointed his right hand between his eyebrows, and a silver-white cloud appeared in front of him. The cloud was only the size of 2 or 3 palms, but it exuded a terrifying aura of destruction. Long Chen took out the Wind Thunder tribulation cloud, and was about to throw it out to collect it. Seeing this, Hunter Sovereign suddenly placed his right hand on Long Chen's shoulder and narrowed his eyes. "Young friend, your aptitude is extraordinary. How about I keep this for you for the time being?" He patted Long Chen's shoulder with his right hand and put away the thundercloud with his left hand. Long Chen looked at the remaining sovereigns with a cold glint in his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Of course." Lai Xing Emperor stared at Hunter Sovereign and shouted, "Hunter Sovereign, aren't you being too shameless? Do you want to take the Wind Thunder tribulation cloud for yourself?" This wind thunder tribulation cloud must not fall into your hands, or don't blame us for being impolite today. Hunter Sovereign, aren't you being too overbearing? Do you think you can take the treasure for yourself? The sovereigns surrounded Hunter Sovereign, obviously still holding a grudge against him for snatching the wind thunder tribulation cloud from Long Chen. On the other side, Long Chen had already taken advantage of the chaos to slowly withdraw from the crowd. Not many people saw him, and most of them were sovereigns. Some of them cupped their fists at Long Chen and turned away, no longer looking at him. Only the immeasurable emperor rushed to his side and whispered, "Hurry up and leave this place. God knows what these sovereigns will do to the wind thunder tribulation cloud." He had just walked to Long Chen's side when he noticed that Long Chen's aura was fluctuating, as if he had suffered some serious injuries. Long Chen whispered, "Quickly send me to the entrance of the space battlefield." The immeasurable emperor noticed that something was wrong with Long Chen. He turned around and carried him on his shoulder as he sped toward the courtyard. He snorted coldly and said, "When we get out, return the godly cicada's empyrean shoes to me." Before the two of them arrived at the space rift, they could already sense that the group of sovereigns behind them had actually started fighting. Amidst the chaos, the immeasurable emperor carried Long Chen directly to the entrance of the space battlefield. Buzz! A dark light flashed between Long Chen's eyebrows, and the space rift really appeared in front of them. The immeasurable emperor jumped into it without hesitation. When they appeared again, Long Chen spoke again, "Leave the Void Soul Mountain tribulation and find a safe place." As soon as Long Chen finished speaking, blood gushed out of his mouth, and he fainted on the emperor's back. The immeasurable emperor frowned and placed Long Chen on the ground. When he saw the 5 faint bloodstains on Long Chen's shoulder, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. That monarch hunter emperor is actually so ruthless. He actually used such a vicious method on an emperor like you. The immeasurable emperor recalled monarch hunter emperor's actions, and for some reason, his heart burned with anger. He quickly carried Long Chen away from the Void Soul Mountain tribulation and rushed toward a remote mountain range. After traveling for a full day and night, the immeasurable emperor finally stopped and opened up a cave in the belly of the mountain. Seeing that Long Chen was still unconscious, he said in a deep voice, "I don't have a magic weapon that can suppress the divine power of an emperor. If you die, don't blame me, die? I'm not going to die." Long Chen suddenly opened his eyes, which were filled with cold, killing intent. The immeasurable emperor couldn't help but shiver when he saw those eyes. Long Chen stared at the immeasurable emperor and said, "Guard me outside the cave. Monarch Hunter Emperor, this matter isn't over." When the immeasurable emperor heard that Long Chen wanted to take revenge on Monarch Hunter Emperor, he quickly said, "You're not thinking of going back to the Void Soul Mountain tribulation, are you? You almost lost your life in the first spatial battlefield. What's the point of going back?" Long Chen stared at the immeasurable emperor. He naturally felt that the immeasurable emperor's soul had begun to crack. If it weren't for the immeasurable emperor, Long Chen probably wouldn't have been able to escape safely. The Sanskrit of the 6 suns had also left a great deal of damage to the immeasurable emperor's soul. It had even directly injured his soul. He said to the immeasurable emperor, "Thank you for your help in the spatial battlefield. If you don't want to go back to the Void Soul Mountain tribulation, I won't force you." The immeasurable emperor looked deeply at Long Chen and snorted coldly, "You want to run away after taking 3 of my magic weapons? Just go into seclusion." Long Chen watched the immeasurable emperor walk out of the cave before Long Chen took out the emperor's body parts. There were 3 emperor's body parts in the 3 storage rings. As soon as the human Tao Emperor walked out of the spatial battlefield, he left the crowd and rushed out of the Void Soul Tribulation Mountain. He couldn't help but look at the Void Soul Tribulation cloud when he passed by Hunter Sovereign. Senior Hunter Emperor was very unhappy with this gaze and coldly snorted. I wonder why Senior Emperor is in such a hurry to leave Void Soul Mountain? Could it be that he's afraid to fight? The human Tao Emperor paused, then suddenly turned around and walked towards Senior Hunter Emperor. He narrowed his eyes and said, "Even if you obtain the Wind and Thunder Tribulation Cloud, I can still crush you. If I didn't have something important to do right now, I would have taken your Wind and Thunder Tribulation Cloud and your life." After saying that, the human Tao Emperor flew into the sky again and disappeared into the horizon. Senior Hunter Emperor's face was gloomy, but he could only snort coldly and say, "I heard that he sent people back to the base a few days ago. Now, it seems that one Imperial Emperor is enough to make him anxious, yet he still dares to speak so arrogantly." Senior Hunter Emperor stepped on the Wind and Thunder Tribulation Cloud and led everyone towards the 5th battlefield. After walking for less than 10,000 meters, they found many Imperial Emperors who had been inflicted with the evil bone art on the ground. These people were eating their own flesh and blood, and the scene was very bloody. Senior Hunter Emperor waved his hand and shot out several beams of divine light, killing 7 or 8 Imperial Emperors who had been inflicted with the evil bone art. He said in a deep voice, "Why are more and more people with the evil bone art coming to Void Soul Mountain recently?" Senior Hunter Emperor and the others entered the 5th battlefield with the Wind and Thunder Tribulation Cloud. With the addition of many sovereigns and Imperial Emperors, the situation in the 5th battlefield changed drastically. More and more skeletons began to die. In a short 15 days, the battle in the 5th battlefield had come to an end. However, just as everyone sent a message to the Ethereal King, Senior Hunter Emperor slowly walked to the Wind and Thunder Cave. "Let's open the Wind and Thunder Cave for the upcoming battle." Senior Hunter Emperor's eyes were filled with greed. As soon as he finished speaking, he gestured with his right hand and grabbed an Imperial Monarch, and he forcefully extracted the Imperial Monarch's soul and suppressed it. Rumble. Bolts of lightning descended. The battle was over, and the Wind and Thunder Cave in the 5th battlefield had indeed opened. "Haha, we're so lucky. There's actually a Wind and Thunder Tribulation Cloud in the Wind and Thunder Cave." Senior Hunter Emperor couldn't help but laugh loudly. He crushed the Imperial Emperor's soul in front of him with one hand and took the Void Soul Tribulation Cloud for himself. Chapter 932. In the first battlefield, Sovereign Zhan Kuang was bleeding from the corner of his mouth. He had been completely suppressed by the 2 Tribulation Cloud. This person's cultivation had increased by 2 layers and was almost on par with him. Now, with the help of the Tribulation Lightning, he was almost invincible in the space battlefield. Sovereign Zhan Kuang roared, "Sovereign Hunter, how dare you use the Tribulation Clouds to attack us under the Void Soul Tribulation Mountain?" Many sovereigns around Sovereign Zhan Kuang frowned when they saw this, but no one was willing to help when they saw the Tribulation lightning filling the sky. Bang bang bang! As soon as Sovereign Zhan Kuang finished speaking, he was engulfed by the Tribulation lightning. Sovereign Hunter turned into a streak of light and rushed out, snatching the Tribulation Clouds in his hands in just a few hundred moves. He stared at the miserable Sovereign Zhan Kuang and sneered, "Isn't this even better? With the help of the Tribulation Clouds, we can win in the first battlefield in 10 days." On the other side, Long Chen was in the belly of the mountain. The aura left behind by Sovereign Hunter in his body had finally disappeared when he merged with the Sovereign Lord's remnant body. The Sovereign Lord's remnant soul sensed the change in Long Chen's aura and knew that Long Chen was about to step into the Sovereign Realm. A powerful and vast Sovereign Lord's origin source flowed from the Sovereign Lord's remnant body into Long Chen's body. Countless Tao laws were born in his eyes, and he seemed to be able to hear the sound of the universe with just one ear. Rumble. Outside the cave, a violent rumble woke the immeasurable Emperor from his meditation. He stared blankly at the cave where Long Chen was and said subconsciously, "Did he break through?" Can this guy really merge with the Sovereign Lord's remnant body? As soon as he finished speaking, Long Chen walked out of the cave. This breakthrough had taken him nearly 20 days, and the Sovereign Lord's sole origin source he had obtained before had helped him a lot. Long Chen breathed a sigh of relief. Now that he had reached the Sovereign Realm, he had the power to protect himself. The immeasurable Emperor felt the pressure from Long Chen's soul as soon as he saw him. His mind was almost blank as he stared at Long Chen and muttered, You haven't really reached the Emperor realm, have you? He could still remember Long Chen's appearance when he first met him in the White Bone Forbidden Zone. At that time, he was only an early-stage Sovereign Emperor, and he had to rely on the power of spirit arrays to defeat him, but now, after a short period of time, he had already reached the Emperor realm. Long Chen looked at the immeasurable Emperor's panicked expression and shook his head. You're a smart person. You should know why I can break through so quickly. The immeasurable Emperor pondered for a moment before his expression suddenly turned solemn. He exhaled heavily and said in a deep voice, This poor monk knows now. Benefactor, you are the rumored person of destiny. The destined one? The immeasurable Emperor saw the confusion on Long Chen's face. The immeasurable Emperor put his palms together and said, The ancient Saint Divine world began to fall into chaos when the ancient Saint Emperor fell from the ancient Saint Divine mountain. In just a few hundred years, earth-shaking changes occurred. There was once a person in the Palace of Destiny who paid the price of his life to see the fate of the ancient Saint Divine world. Rumor has it that a disciple of the ancient Saint Emperor will reorganize the ancient Saint Divine world and even lead it to prosperity. A few years ago, the inextinguishable law evolved. It is said that a disciple of the ancient Saint Emperor entered the world. Could that person be you? The immeasurable Emperor's voice trembled as he spoke. If he guessed correctly, the person standing in front of him at this moment might be the future ancient Saint Divine World Master. Long Chen looked at the immeasurable monarch. With a wave of his hand, he erased the 3 imprints on the immeasurable monarch's forehead. He looked at the immeasurable monarch and said indifferently, You are right. I am indeed the disciple of the ancient Saint Monarch. The immeasurable Emperor finally understood why Long Chen was so desperate to obtain the ancient Saint Emperor's body. If he could use the ancient Saint Emperor's body as a foundation, it would be enough for him to soar to the top. The immeasurable Emperor took a deep breath and looked at Long Chen. Since you have treated me with sincerity, I am also willing to swear on the inextinguishable law to become your brother. When Long Chen heard this, he raised his eyebrows fiercely and glared at the immeasurable monarch. He coldly snorted and said, You really know how to do business. Even someone like you has to consider being my friend. Believe me, benefactor, my cultivation may not be as high as yours, but my understanding of the ancient Saint Divine world far surpasses yours. Long Chen's eyes were like torches as he looked at the cracks on the immeasurable Emperor's soul. In the end, he nodded and agreed to the immeasurable Emperor's oath. However, he had a feeling that he had been tricked by the immeasurable Emperor. With just a few words, not only did this guy solve the problem of the coronation, he also gained a brother who could become the next ancient Saint Emperor. He even saved his life. When the ancient Saint Emperor's soul heard that Long Chen had actually agreed to this person's oath, he could only snort and say, Give this cultivation technique that was born from chaos to him. If he doesn't betray you, then this is a boundless fortune. If he still has evil thoughts, Long Chen nodded and waved his right hand. He took out a divine will brand from his forehead. He handed the brand to the immeasurable Emperor and said calmly, This is for you. I hope you won't betray me. The immeasurable Emperor hesitated for a moment before accepting the divine will brand. After the divine will brand entered his soul, his entire body emitted an extremely strong light. However, he also clearly felt that there was a strand of hair-like divine will that entered his soul. This divine will floated in his body. It seemed calm, but it was as if it could completely shatter him at any time. Looking at this divine will, the immeasurable emperor's eyes narrowed. He directly knelt on the ground and said, "Thank you, Master, for your reward." Long Chen frowned and asked in confusion, "When did I say I wanted to be your master?" The immeasurable emperor shook his head and said seriously, "You and I are brothers. Your master is my master. Although the ancient Saint Emperor is no longer around, this thing was passed down by him. Naturally, I have to acknowledge him as my master." Only then did Long Chen realize that the immeasurable emperor must have noticed that the ancient Saint Emperor's remnant soul was left in his body. That was why he shamelessly acknowledged him as his master. Long Chen coldly snorted and said, "You'd better change your attire. You're really a disgrace to all monks." The immeasurable emperor laughed embarrassedly and replied, "Should we return to the Void Soul Mountain now and prepare to take down King Hunter Emperor? I don't believe that you didn't do anything when you gave him the Tribulation Cloud." Long Chen could not help but reveal a trace of killing intent. Seeing this expression, the immeasurable emperor shook his head and said, "It seems that you and I should really be brothers. Otherwise, I will be killed by you sooner or later." The two of them rushed towards the Void Soul Mountain again. Chapter 933. In the second spatial battlefield, Hunter Emperor's expression was a little ugly because the wind-lightning cave did not produce any tribulation cloud. Buzz. Just as he was about to leave, Long Chen and the immeasurable emperor walked in from the entrance. Long Chen saw Hunter Emperor and the 3 tribulation clouds under his feet from afar. Hunter Emperor also saw Long Chen from afar, but unlike the immeasurable emperor, Long Chen did not reveal his appearance. Hunter Emperor immediately frowned and said to Long Chen in a deep voice, "Why did you come back? This is not a place you should be." He was very confused as to why Long Chen was still alive. His hidden energy was enough to kill any sovereign emperor. Long Chen slowly walked towards him, but his gaze fell on the tribulation clouds under Hunter Emperor's feet. Long Chen sneered and said, "Sir, you've found quite a lot of good things for me. I'll take them." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand in front of everyone, and the 3 silvery white tribulation clouds flew away from Hunter Emperor's feet. This scene was witnessed by more than 40 sovereigns. They were all stunned, and a few of them suddenly realized that Long Chen had handed over the tribulation clouds. Did this person do something to the tribulation clouds? What means does he have to be able to take away the other 2 tribulation clouds? Now that the tribulation clouds are gone, let's see if Hunter Emperor can still be so arrogant. They're both second-stage sovereigns, but this person's strength is no weaker than a mid-stage sovereign's by relying on the tribulation clouds. His actions are truly disgusting. Although this person has taken away the tribulation clouds, he's just a sovereign emperor. Isn't he just throwing his life away? We can't let Hunter Emperor get his hands on the tribulation clouds again. Why don't we kill him now and take them away? After Long Chen took away the tribulation clouds, the surrounding sovereigns immediately became restless. However, at that moment, Long Chen suddenly exuded the aura of an sovereign emperor. The 3 tribulation clouds under his feet shone brightly and suddenly mobilized all the tribulation clouds in the spatial battlefield. The tribulation clouds in the sky converged into a 10-meter-tall pillar of light that descended upon Hunter Emperor, instantly engulfing him. Everyone in the surroundings quickly retreated. Their faces were filled with shock, but they were also filled with confusion. How is this guy an sovereign emperor? Wasn't he originally an sovereign emperor? Could it be that after that battle, he received the good fortune of stepping into the emperor realm? No wonder he dared to come back alone to challenge a sovereign hunter. It turns out that he's already an sovereign. Emperor. Hunter Emperor to sovereign emperor. The surrounding people looked on coldly as they watched the sovereign hunter suffer such a setback. The divine power around Hunter Sovereign exploded, and a part of his body was blasted to pieces. He glared at Long Chen and roared, "Hand over the tribulation clouds." As soon as he said that, he grabbed at the void with both hands. Countless Tao laws condensed and countless illusory origin beasts whizzed out. These origin beasts entered Long Chen's body in the blink of an eye. At the same time, Hunter Emperor took a step forward and charged at Long Chen. Long Chen controlled the tribulation clouds this time. If he mobilized the tribulation cloud's power, Hunter Emperor would definitely not be able to defeat him. Only by getting close to Long Chen and ending the battle quickly would he have a chance of winning. In his eyes, Long Chen was just a guy who had just broken through to the Tao Emperor realm. He might still have a chance. Countless illusory origin beasts charged into Long Chen's body. The explosive aura blasted the immeasurable Emperor 10,000 meters away as he coughed up blood. These origin beasts were all condensed from Tao laws. Any one of them could probably kill a perfected sovereign emperor. Rumble. Under everyone's watchful eyes, they heard a deafening rumble coming from Long Chen's body. The violent aura disappeared completely in just 3 breaths. "Since you want to get close to me, I'll give you a chance." Long Chen sneered and stood in place without moving a single step. The halberd in his hand blasted at Hunter Emperor. Hunter Emperor was overjoyed. Although he had not expected Long Chen to be able to escape from the suppression of so many illusory origin beasts in an instant, he was still careless enough to let Hunter Emperor get close to him. Hunter Emperor moved his left hand and a strange weapon appeared. It was a long spear with a origin beast statue on it that exuded Tao aura. When the long spear moved, countless rays of divine light condensed and blasted toward Long Chen. The halberd collided with the long spear. The divine light shattered inch by inch as if it was solid and swept out in all directions. Everyone was shocked. No one had expected that Long Chen, who had just broken through to the sovereign stage, would dare to exchange blows with Hunter Emperor. Hunter Emperor's expression changed slightly. He felt a boundless suppressive force coming from Long Chen's halberd, as if it wanted to disperse the divine power around him. Bang bang bang! The two of them exchanged dozens of blows in the blink of an eye. Long Chen was not at a disadvantage at all. Azura whirling elephant! Buzz! An Azura totem suddenly descended from the sky, instantly suppressing the divine radiance around Monarch Hunter Sovereign. His aura turned sluggish. Hunter Emperor was unwilling to retreat when he saw this. He pulled away from Long Chen and used a soul skill with a ferocious expression. Roar! Chapter 934. Emperor Zhan Kuang and Emperor Zhan Kuang walked up to Long Chen and gave him a deep look. Emperor Zhan Kuang was the first to speak. "Can I have a word with you?" Long Chen nodded and followed Emperor Zhan Kuang to the side, setting up an isolation array. Emperor Zhan Kuang asked, "Are you Long Chen?" Long Chen nodded. Emperor Zhan Kuang and Emperor Zhan Kuang looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. However, they did not ask any more questions. Emperor Zhan Kuang said in a deep voice, "I left a spy in the battlefield where the human Tao Emperor is. He has already left the Void Soul Mountain." Long Chen's expression changed slightly when he heard this, but he soon calmed down and asked Emperor Zhan Kuang, "Does Senior know what the human Tao Emperor's cultivation is?" "Fourth layer Emperor realm, but he is a divine race born from the earthly origin. His earthly origin is extremely rich, so his battle strength is far above mine," Emperor Zhan Kuang replied. Long Chen frowned, but he had already guessed that the human Tao Emperor must have returned to the Warring States Kingdom. Since the last time the human Tao Emperor sent people to find Long Chen, the Emperor's remnant soul had completely covered up Long Chen's traces. Unless they had his origin aura, even if some divine race had scouts, they would not be able to find Long Chen's specific whereabouts. This time, the human Tao Emperor had returned to his base alone because he had no other choice. Long Chen took a deep breath and replied, "With my current cultivation, unless he is in the Void Soul Mountain, I can rely on the tribulation clouds to fight him." Long Chen had just finished speaking when Emperor Zhan Kuang shook his head and said, "I'm not telling you this because I want you to chase after him, but because I want you to leave the North Foot territory. Now that the two divine kings are fighting for glory, we emperors are not allowed to leave the Void Soul Mountain, but the human Tao Emperor has left. Isn't this obvious? The one standing behind him is the ethereal king." Long Chen understood, but he was not willing to leave the Void Soul Mountain, nor was he willing to leave the North Foot territory. "I understand your intentions, but this time, I must stay in the Hollow Soul Mountain," Long Chen said firmly. When the two of them saw this, they could only let out a long sigh and said no more. The three of them removed the isolation array and walked back into the crowd. Many emperors couldn't help showing fear when they saw the tribulation clouds under Long Chen's feet. Long Chen slowly walked towards the Emperor Hunter pinned to the ground by the 9 firmament suppression halberd. He narrowed his eyes and said, "Not only did you take away the wind lightning tribulation cloud, you even left a strand of divine energy in my body to take my life. Today I will kill you." Bang! Chapter 935. The Calamity Mountain region was where the Void Soul Temple was located. It was also where the lightning tribulation of the entire Void Soul Mountain gathered day and night. Everyone was very confused, but they had no choice but to continue forward. Long Chen and the Immeasurable Emperor sensed a hint of unease. The Immeasurable Emperor came over and asked Long Chen, "Is there a problem? There seems to be something wrong with the Void Soul Mountain." Long Chen nodded and communicated with the Emperor Lord's remnant soul in his mind. The Emperor Lord's remnant soul replied, "There are indeed 2 God King level auras in the Void Soul Temple. They should be God King Bone Kill and the Ethereal King. However, I don't sense anything wrong with this place. I'm afraid the abnormality here has something to do with the 2 God Kings." Long Chen nodded, but he was very confused. It was not a big deal for 2 God Kings to appear in the Void Soul Temple at the same time. At their level, it was not impossible for them to be in a stalemate and watch their subordinates fight. After all, they had tacitly agreed to the battles in the 9 Great Space Battlefield. Long Chen shook his head. At this moment, the arrow was already knocked on the bowstring. There was no point in thinking too much. Everyone carefully crossed the inner mountains and arrived at the Calamity Mountain region. These sovereigns had never been to the Calamity Mountain region before. Looking at the Void Soul Temple under the Lightning Heaven realm, everyone looked at it with reverence. That was where the Ethereal King resided. "Come in." As soon as everyone set foot in the Calamity Mountain region, they heard a thunderous voice. The voice seemed to have some kind of magic that made them unable to resist. Only Long Chen managed to keep his mind clear by relying on the Emperor Lord's remnant soul. Everyone walked towards the Void Soul Temple one after another. Long Chen followed closely behind them. "There's something wrong with the Void Soul Temple. There seems to be a tyrannical force sealed underground. It's at least at the God King level." Long Chen walked in front. As soon as he stepped into the Void Soul Temple, the Emperor Lord's remnant soul transmitted a message to him. Long Chen reached out and grabbed the Immeasurable Emperor, indicating for him to slow down and walk behind everyone. Now that they were here, the Emperor Lord's remnant soul had sensed something underground. It seemed the matter was not simple. Everyone involuntarily inhaled a breath of cool air when they entered the inner hall. They saw that there were actually 2 main seats at the front of the Void Soul Hall. There was a person seated on each of the main seats. The person on the left had white bones all over his body. His hair was like a dark fire, and his eyes were green. He looked extremely evil. The person on the right did not have a physical body.